When he says it, he means it, and you don't get to bend it and twist it to what you want. That's the whole point of Deuteronomy 8:2. He's allowing you to walk through this wilderness walk so that you can prove whether or not it's in your heart to do what he says. I focus a lot on the commandments, but ultimately it's about people. It's about living together forever with people. Yes, Paul.
Okay, Sam, I need one of the wirelesses up here. Which wireless can I have? I need one of the handhelds up here. Don't stand. So, perfect. All right, are we live? Not yet. Okay. Tell you guys all the secrets before that. All right, don't go live yet. I gotta tell them something doesn't have to go live. All right, I know it's raining somewhat, and it's foggy, and it's inconvenient to walk in it, although it's not doing very much. That doesn't change the fact that you should not be parked in front of the dining hall, unless you have a reason to have to be parked in front of the dining hall. And if you have a reason, you ought to have cleared that with Robert or myself or Kurt or one of the other leaders. We need the parking spots in front of the dining hall for people to get in and out of that need to get in and out of the dining hall, food, with other services and other things. Okay? We were doing pretty good for a day or two, and now the weather's changed again, and everybody's starting to park wherever they can find a spot close and convenient. Okay, we can't have you parking in front. Now, this is a message that came to me from one of the Shameshes who sees the issue, so don't just get mad at me. This is the rules. We make these rules. They're to benefit everyone. It's not like in some places where we're just going to save the spots for all the special Good? All right, Boker Tov. Good morning, Yisrael. Good morning, Israel. That sounds so familiar. Somebody did. Wasn't there a movie that had that in there? Good morning, Israel. All right. Isn't that a lot better than the whatever they do? I don't know what they do. So I'm not trying to mock them. I'm just making a joke just to be funny. Okay. All right. So today, guess what we're doing? We're reading the book of? No, I changed my mind. We're going to read something else. No, Deuteronomy. We're reading the book of Deuteronomy. Now, you have to do a really good job today, and especially with the Midrash part, because our good buddy here, my brother Tony Hughes, has never been to one of these things, and we have to impress him. So you need to be on your top game. You got to be on top of it. Now, of course, we're going to expect him to jump in there and interact in the Midrash, so you're going to have to be on your top game. All right, the gauntlet has been tossed. You have been warned. All right, you're on it. All right. So we're going to read today from Deuteronomy chapter 22 to the end of 28. Okay, we're going to read from 22 to the end of 28. I've got, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 readings. So this front row here up to where Frank is sitting, so that's about as far as you want to go. You reading today? Okay, so just that front row, because I need to have that room for me to run over there and sit while we're in between and write some things down. Excellent. Okay, we have 22 readings. So again, a reminder how this works, especially if you're new on the live stream. What we're going to do is going to have people come up. I'm going to give them a blessing. We're going to do a traditional blessing over them. Then we're going to instruct them what verses they're reading. They're going to go ahead and read the verses. They're going to sit down. We'll keep doing this till we finish the readings. Then we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back, and we're going to discuss these, what do we got, 22 to 28, so we're going to discuss these 7 chapters, okay? We're going to discuss these 7 chapters. All right, so we will begin with, coming up here, Jeff. Now, as Jeff's coming up here, let's open with a general prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, we're coming together as a body. The body of Yisrael, the children of Yisrael, the body of Messiah, to hear and to, to read out loud, to speak, and then hear your word read. Father, in accordance with one of the verses in Deuteronomy that instructs the people to come together, at least at the Shemitah and the Jubilee, the Yovel, to come and hear the book of Deuteronomy read. And so, Father, we're doing this in accordance to your word, desiring, seeking, and just wanting from the abundance of our heart to be changed in the instruction that you have for us, to have that instruction take root and bear fruit. Well, I like that. We'll have to use that some other time. Take root and bear fruit. And so, Father, we thank you. We thank you, and we just ask your presence here, guiding, leading, and inspiring all that would be done, so it would be to your glory and to your honor. In the name of Yeshua, we do these things. Amen. 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 Okay, our first reader, Jeff. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Jeff, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. All right, we're going to start in chapter 22 with verses 1 through 19.
Shalom. Chapter 22, verse 1. Deuteronomy. You are not to watch your brother's ox or sheep straying and behave as if it hadn't seen it. You must bring it back to your brother. If your brother is not close by or you don't know who the owner is, you are to bring it home to your house, and it will remain with you until your brother asks for it. Then you are to give it back to him. You are to do the same with his donkey, his coat, or anything else your brother has lost. If you find something he lost, you must not ignore it. If you see your brother's donkey or ox collapsed on the road, You may not behave as if you hadn't seen it. You must help him get up on its feet again. A woman is not to wear men's clothing, and a man is not to put on women's clothing, for whoever does these things is detestable to Adonai your God. If as you are walking along, and you happen to see a bird's nest in a tree or on the ground with the chicks or eggs, the mother bird is sitting on the chicks or the eggs, you are not to take the mother with the chicks. You must let the mother go, but you may not take the chicks for yourself, that things will go well with you and you will prolong your life. When you build a new house, you must build a low wall around the roof. Otherwise, someone's going to fall off and you will be responsible for his death. You're not to sow two kinds of seed between your rows of vines, because if you do, both the two harvested crops and the yield from the vines must be forfeited. You're not to plow with an ox or a donkey together, and you're not to wear clothing woven of two kinds of thread, wool and linen together. You're to make for yourself twisted cords on the four corners of the garment you wrap around yourself. If a man marries a woman, has sexual relations with her, then have come to dislike her, brings false charges against her, and defames her character by saying, I married this woman, but I had intercourse with her, and I did not find evidence that she was a virgin. Then the girl's father and mother are to take the evidence of the girl's virginity to the leaders of the town at the gate. The girl's father will say to the leaders, I let my daughter marry this man, but he hates her. So he's brought false charges that he didn't find evidence of her virginity. Yet, here's the evidence of my daughter's virginity. And they will lay the cloth before the town leaders. The leaders of the town are to take the man, punish him, and fine him 2.5 shekels of silver, which they will give to the girl's father, because he has publicly defamed a virgin of Israel. She will remain his wife, and he is forbidden from divorcing her as long as he lives. But,
We're good.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's great. Thank you. And you know what? Once you get started, it's easy just to say, I'm going to keep going and going, especially when you're close to the end of a chapter. When I broke up the verses, I broke them up sort of with the idea of, I know that the chapter marks and the verse marks are there sort of, whoever put them there when millions of years ago, right? You know what I'm saying? Long time ago. But sometimes they put them in a place that doesn't, in my opinion, break up the thoughts or complete thoughts. So if I'm breaking up the readings, and I try to make them about 15 to 20 verses at the most, I try to put them where the sort of the thought changes, okay? Where the thought changes. Now, in 22 and in verse 20, we're going to now, okay, we finished what the man was going to do. It says, now if the matter is true, now we're going to have the next piece of it. So see how that works? So we're going to try and find those places where we can have those breaks. Okay, next up, Samuel. Okay. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Samuel, has come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay. Now you're going to be in 22:20 to 23:8.
But if the matter is true that the girl was not found a maiden, then they shall bring out the girl to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her to death with stones, because she has done wickedness in Yisrael to whore in her father's house. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. When a man is found lying with a woman married to a husband, then both of them shall die, both the man that lay with the woman and the woman. Thus you shall purge the evil from Yisrael. When a girl who is a maiden is engaged to a husband, and a father finds her in the city and lies with her, or a man finds her in the city and lies with her, then you shall bring them both out to the gate of that city, and shall stone them to death with stones, the girl because she did not cry out in the city, and the man because he has humbled his neighbor's wife. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. But if a man finds the girl who is engaged in the field, and the man takes hold of her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. But you shall do no matter to the girl. The girl has no sin worthy of death, For the matter is like a man who rises against his neighbor and murders him, a being. For he found her in the field, and she cried out, the engaged girl, but without anyone to save her. When a man finds a girl who is a maiden, who is not engaged, and he seizes her and lies with her, and they are found out, then the man who lay with her shall give to the girl's father 50 pieces of silver, and she is to be his wife because he has humbled her. He is not allowed to put her away all his days. A man does not take his father's wife, nor uncover his father's skirt. He who is wounded by crushing of the testicles, or whose penis is cut off, shall not enter into the community of Yahweh. A mamzer shall not enter the community of Yahweh. Even the 10th generation of his shall not enter the community of Yahweh. An Ammonite or a Moabite shall not enter the assembly of Yahweh. Even a 10th generation of them shall not ever enter the assembly of Yahweh, because they did not meet you with bread and water on the way when you came out of Mitzrayim, and because they hired against you Balaam, son of Beor, from Pethor of Aram Naharaim, to curse you. But Yahweh your Elohim refused to listen to Balaam, and Yahweh your Elohim turned the curse into a blessing for you, because Yahweh your Elohim loves you. Do not seek their peace, nor their good all your days forever. Do not loathe an Edomite, for he is your brother. Do not loathe a Mitzrayim, because you are a stranger in his land. The children of the 3rd generation born to them do enter the assembly of Yahweh.
Amen. Amen. All right, Hugo. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Hugo, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Hugo's going to take us from chapter 23, verse 9, to the end of the chapter.
When the camp goes out against your enemies, then you shall guard yourself from every evil matter. When there is any man among you who is not clean because of an emission in the night, then he shall go outside the camp. Let him not come into the midst of the camp. And it shall be at the approach of evening that he bathes with water. And when the sun sets, let him come into the midst of the camp. And you shall have a place outside the camp where you shall go out, and you shall have a sharp implement among your equipment, and when you sit down outside, you shall dig with it and turn and cover your excrement. For Yahweh your Elohim walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore your camp shall be set apart, so that he does not see unclean matter among you, and shall turn away from you. You do not hand over to his master the slave who has escaped from his master to you. Let him dwell with you in your midst, in the place which he chooses within one of your gates, where it is pleasing to him. Do not oppress him. None of the daughters of Israel is to be a cult prostitute, nor any of the sons of Israel be a cult prostitute. Do not bring the harlot fee of a whore, or the pay of a dog, to the house of Yahweh your Elohim for any vowed offering, for both of these are an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. Do not lend at interest to your brother, interest of silver, interest of food, or interest of whatever is lent at interest. To a foreigner you lend at interest, but to your brother you do not lend at interest, so that Yahweh your Elohim might bless you in all that you put your hand to in the land which you are entering to possess. When you make a vow to Yahweh your Elohim, do not delay to pay it, for Yahweh your Elohim is certainly requiring it of you, and it shall be sin in you. But when you abstain from vowing, it is not sin in you. That which is gone out, that which is gone from your lips, you shall guard and do, for you voluntarily vowed to Yahweh your Elohim what you have promised with your mouth. When you come into your neighbor's vineyard, you shall eat to the satisfaction of your desire, but do not put any in a receptacle of yours. When you go into your neighbor's standing grain, you shall pluck the heads with your hand, but do not use a sickle on your neighbor's standing grain.
Amen. Amen. Okay, next reader, Ollie. Okay, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Ali, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Ollie's going to take us now into chapter 24 and read verses 1 through 15.
Thank you. When a man takes a wife and shall marry her, then it shall be, if she finds no favor in his eyes, because he has found a matter of uncoveredness in her, and he shall write her a certificate of divorce, and put it in her hand, and send her out of his house. And if she left his house and went and became another man's wife, and the latter husband shall hate her, and write her a certificate of divorce, and put it in her hand, and send her out to his house, or when the latter husband dies who took her to be his wife, then her former husband who sent her away is not allowed to take her back to be his wife after she has been defiled, for that would be an abomination before Yahweh. And do not bring sin on the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance. When a man has taken a new wife, let him not go out into the army, nor let any matter be imposed upon him. He shall be exempt 1 year for the sake of his home, to rejoice with his wife whom he has taken. No one takes in pledge the lower or the upper millstone, for he would be taking a life in pledge. When a man is found kidnapping any of his brothers of the children of Israel, and treats him harshly or sells him, then that kidnapper shall die. Thus you shall purge the evil from your midst. Take heed, in an outbreak of leprosy, to diligently guard and do according to all that the priests, the Levites, teach you. As I have commanded them, so shall you guard to do. Remember what Yahweh your Elohim did to Miriam on the way when you came out of Mitzrayim, when you led your brother alone. When you lend your brother alone, do not go into his house to get his pledge. Stand outside and let the man to whom you lend bring the pledge out to you. And if the man is poor, do not sleep with his pledge. By all means, return the pledge to him at sundown, and he shall sleep in his own garment, and shall bless you. And it shall be righteousness to you before Yahweh your Elohim. Do not oppress a hired servant who is poor and needy, of your brothers or of your strangers who are in your land within your gates. Give him his wages on the same day, and do not let the sun go down on it, for he is poor and lifts up his being to it, so that he does not cry out against you to Yahweh, and it shall be sin in you.
Amen. Thank you, Ollie. All right, Linda. All right, he who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Linda. Excuse me. Let me start that again. I did that just so she would laugh. We're working on her, she's trying to cheer up a little bit. Everybody knows Linda's always smiling. That's the best. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Linda, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. All right, so chapter 24, verse 16 to chapter 25, verse 10. That's a tough one. You got to go across a chapter. Okay, 24:16 to 25:10.
Fathers are not to put to death for their children, and children are not put to death for their fathers. Each is to lie for his own sin. Each is to die for his own sin. Do not twist the right ruling of a stranger or the fatherless, nor take the garment of a widow. But you shall remember that you were a slave in Mitzrayim, and that Yahweh your Elohim ransomed you from there. Therefore I am commanding you to do this word. When you reap your harvest in your field and have forgotten a sheaf in the field, do not go back to get it. Let it be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, so that Yahweh your Elohim might bless you in all the work of your hands. When you beat your olive trees, do not examine the branch behind you. Let it be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. When you gather the grapes of your vineyard, do not glean behind you. Let it be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim. Therefore I am commanding you to do this word. When there is a dispute between men, they shall come unto judgment, and they shall be judged for the righteous, declared righteous, and the wrongdoer declared wrong. And it shall be, if the wrongdoer is to be struck, that the judge shall cause him to lie down and be struck in his presence with the number of blows according to his wrong. 40 strikes he gives him, but no more, lest he strike him with many more blows than these, and your brother be degraded before your eyes. Do not muzzle an ox while it is threshing. When brothers dwell together, and one of them has died and has no son, the widow of the dead man shall not become a stranger outside. Her husband's brother does go into her, and shall take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears does rise up for the name of his dead brother, so that his name is not blotted out of Israel. But if the man does not desire to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gates to the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up a name to his brother in Israel. He does not agree to perform the duty of my husband's brother. The elders of his city shall then call him and speak to him, and he shall stand and say, I have no desire to take her. Then his brother's wife shall come to him in the presence of the elders, and remove his sandal from his foot, and shall spit in his face, and answer and say, thus it is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. And in Israel his name shall be called the house of him who has his sandal removed.
Amen. Amen. Okay, Arthur. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Arthur, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Arthur's going to continue here in chapter 25, and also, just like his wife did, have to go into another chapter. So 25:11 to 26:9.
When men fight with one another, a man and his brother, and the wife of one shall draw near to rescue her husband from the hand of the one striking him, and shall put out her hand and take hold of him by the genitals, then you shall cut off her hand, your eye does not pardon. You shall not have in your bag different weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have perfect and right weight, a perfect and right measure, so that they prolong your days on the soil which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. For all who do these and all who do unrighteously are an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way as you were coming out of Mitzrayim, how he met you on the way and attacked your back, all the feeble ones in the rear, when you were tired and weary, and he did not fear Elohim. Therefore it shall be, when Yahweh your Elohim has given you rest from the enemies all around, in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess as an inheritance, that you shall blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heavens. Do not forget. And it shall be, when you come into the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it, that you shall take some of the first of all the fruits of the soil which bring from your land that Yahweh Elohim is giving you, and shall put it in a basket, and go to the place where Yahweh your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell there, and you shall come to the one who is priest in those days, and say to him, I shall declare today to Yahweh your Elohim that I have come to the land which Yahweh swore to our fathers to give us. And the priest shall take the basket from your hand, and place it before the slaughter place of Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall answer and say before Yahweh your Elohim, my father was a perishing Aramean, and he went down to Mitzrayim, and sojourned there with a few men. And there he became a nation, great, mighty, and numerous. But the Mitzrayite did evil to us, and afflicted us, and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried out to Yahweh Elohim of our fathers, and Yahweh heard our voice, and saw our affliction, and our toil, and our oppression. And Yahweh brought us out of Mitzrayim with a strong hand, and with outstretched arm, and with great fear, and with signs and wonders. And he brought us to this place, and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey.
Amen. Amen. All right. Next up, we have Barbara. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Barbara, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Okay, Barbara's going to take us now in chapter 26 from verse 10 to the end of the chapter.
Chapter 26. And it shall be, when you come into the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you as an inheritance, and you possess it and dwell in it.
Verse 10 to the end of the
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yes, you're right. Excuse me. And now see, I have brought the first fruits of the land which you, O Yahuwah, have given me. Then you shall place it before Yahuwah your Elohim, and bow down before Yahuwah your Elohim, and shall rejoice in all the good which Yahuwah your Elohim has given to you and your house, you and the Levite and the stranger who is among you. When you have completed tithing, all the tithe of your increase in the 3rd year, which is the year of tithing, and have given it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the fatherless, and to the widow, and they have eaten within your gates and have been satisfied, then you shall say before Yahuwah your Elohim, I have put away the set-apart portion from my house, and also have given it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the fatherless, and to the widow, according to all your command, which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed your commands, nor have I forgotten. I have not eaten any of it when in mourning, nor have I removed any of it for any unclean use, nor given any of it for the dead. I have obeyed the voice of Yahuwah my Elohim. I have done according to all that you have commanded me. Look from your set-apart dwelling place from the heavens, and bless your people, Yisrael, and the land which you have given us, as you swore to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. Today, Yahuwah, your Elohim, is commanding you to do these laws and right rulings, and you shall guard and do them with all your heart and with all your being. You have today caused Yahuwah to proclaim to be your Elohim, and to walk in his ways, and guard his laws and his commands, and his right rulings, and to obey his voice. And Yahuwah has caused you to proclaim today to be his people, a treasured possession, as he has spoken to you, and to guard all his commands, so as to set you high above all nations which he has made, for a praise, and for a name, and for esteem, and for you to be a set-apart people to Yahuwah your Elohim, as he has spoken.
Amen. Amen. There we go. All right, Frank. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Frank, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set-apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Frank's going to now take us into chapter 27 and read verses 1 through 13.
And Moshe with the elders of Israel commanded the people, saying, Guard all the commands which I am commanding you today, And it shall be on the day when you pass over the Arden to the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, that you shall set up for yourselves large stones, and plaster them with plaster, and write on them all the words of this Torah when you have passed over, so that you go into the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, as Yahweh Elohim of your fathers has spoken to you. And it shall be when you have passed over the Arden that on Mount Ebal you shall set up these stones, which I command you today, and you shall plaster them with plaster, and build a slaughter place to Yahweh your Elohim there, a slaughter place of stones. Do not use an iron tool on them. Build the slaughter place of Yahweh your Elohim with complete stones, and you shall offer ascending offerings on it to Yahweh your Elohim, and slaughter peace offerings, and eat there, and rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall write all the words of this Torah on the stones, plainly and well. And Moshe and the priests and the Levites and all spoke to all Israel, saying, Be silent and hear, O Israel. This day you have become the people of Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, and do his commands and his laws which I command you today. And Moshe commanded the people on that day, saying, These are to stand on Mount Gerizim to bless the people when you have passed over the Arden: Shimon and Levi and Yehuda and Issachar and Joseph and Benjamin. And these are to stand on Mount Ebal to curse: Reuben, Gad, and Asher, and Zebulun and Dan and Naphtali.
Amen. Amen. Okay, just hold on a second, Robert. I'm gonna just take this next section. Okay. So in this section, it says, And the Levites shall speak with a loud voice and say to all the men of Israel. And at the end of each one of these verses, there's a Amen. Okay, so together we can all do the Amen. Cursed is the man who makes a carved or molded image, an abomination to Yahweh, the work of the hands of the craftsman, and sets it up in secret. And all the people shall answer and say, Amen. Cursed is he who makes light of his father or his mother, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who moves his neighbor's boundary, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who misleads the blind in the way, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who twists the right ruling of the stranger, the fatherless and widow, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with his father's wife, because he has uncovered his father's bed, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with any beast, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with his sister, the daughter of his father, or the daughter of his mother, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who lies with his mother-in-law, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who strikes his neighbor secretly, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who takes a bribe to strike an innocent being, and all the people shall say, Amen. Cursed is he who does not establish the words of this Torah, and all the people shall say, Amen. Amen. Okay, chapter 28, and Robert's coming up. Okay, so after Robert, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I got 3 more. So I've got 1, 2. I need 1 more person. Okay? Oh, Rabbi Tom, you want to go last? Okay, we'll have you go last. You can close this up. Okay, we're going into chapter 28, the blessings and the cursings. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Robert, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity on all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, chapter 28, verses 1 through 14.
And it shall be, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to guard and do all his commands which I have commanded you today, that Yahweh your Elohim shall set you high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you, if you obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim. Blessed are you in the city, and blessed are you in the field. Blessed is the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your livestock, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flocks. Blessed is your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed are you when you come in, and blessed are you when you go out. Yahweh causes your enemies who rise against you to be smitten before your face. They come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. Yahweh commands the blessings on you in your storehouses and in all which you set your hand, and shall bless you in the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you. Yahweh does establish you as a set-apart people for himself, to himself, for he has sworn to you, if you guard the commands of Yahweh your Elohim and walk in his ways. And all the peoples of the earth shall see that the name of Yahweh is called upon you, and they shall be afraid of you. And Yahweh shall make you to have plenty of what is good in the fruit of your body, in the fruit of your livestock, in the fruit of your ground, in the land of which Yahweh swore to your fathers to give you. Yahweh opens to you his good treasure in the heavens to give the rain to your land in its season, to bless all the work of your hand. And you shall lend to many nations, but you do not borrow. And Yahweh shall make you head and not the tail, and you shall be only on top and not beneath, if you obey the commands of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you today to guard and to do. And do not turn aside from any of the words which I am commanding you today, right or left, to go after other mighty ones to serve them.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Robert. Okay, next up, we have Nate. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Nate, who's come up down to Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Nate's going to take us now from verse 15 to 29.
And it shall be, if you do not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to guard to do all his commands and his laws, which I command you today, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. Cursed are you in the city, and cursed are you in the field. Cursed is your basket and your kneading bowl. Cursed is the fruit of your body and the fruit of your land, the increase of your cattle and the offspring of your flocks. Cursed are you when you come in, and cursed are you when you go out. Yahweh sends on you the curse, the confusion and the rebuke and all that you set your hand to do, until you are destroyed and until you perish quickly because of the evil of your doings by which you have forsaken me. Yahweh makes the plague cling to you until he has consumed you from the land which you are going to possess. Yahweh strikes you with the wasting disease and with inflammation and with burning and with extreme heat and with the sword and with blight and with mildew, and they shall pursue you until you perish. And your heavens which are over your head shall be bronze, and the earth which is under you iron. Yahweh makes the rain of your land powder and dust. From the heavens it comes down on you until you are destroyed. Yahweh causes you to be defeated before your enemies. You go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them. And you shall become a horror to all the reigns of the earth. And your carcasses shall be food for all the birds of the heavens and the beasts of the earth, with no one to frighten them away. Yahweh shall strike you with the boils of Mitzrayim, with tumors, with the scab and with the itch, from which you are unable to be healed. Yahweh shall strike you with the madness and blindness and bewilderment of heart. And you shall be groping at noon, as a blind man gropes in darkness, and not prosper in your ways, and you shall be only oppressed and plundered all the days with no one to save you.
Amen. Amen. Okay. Tamara? I knew you got to remember your name eventually. We got a lot of new people, so it's tough sometimes. That's what I wanted to make sure to do. I wanted to make sure I pronounced it correctly. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Tamara, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless her and her family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of her hands. Amen. Amen. Okay, you're going to now take us from verse 30 to verse 46.
Okay. Thank you. You become engaged to a wife. Okay, just making sure I was in the right spot. You become engaged to a wife, but another man does lie with her. You build a house, but do not dwell in it. You plant a vineyard, but you do not use its fruit. Your ox is slaughtered before your eyes, but you do not eat of it. Your donkey is violently taken from before you, and it is not given back to you. Your sheep are given to your enemies, with no one to save them. Your son and your daughters are given to another people, and your eyes look and fail for them all day long, and your hand powerless. A people whom you have not known eat the fruit of your land and all your labors, and you shall be only oppressed and crushed all the days. And you shall be maddened because of the sight which your eyes see. Yahweh strikes you in the knees and on the legs, and evil boils of which you are unable to be healed, and from the sole of your foot to the top of your head. Yahweh brings you to the sovereign, whom you set over you in the nation which neither you nor your fathers have known. And there you shall serve other mighty ones, wood and stone. Thus you shall become an astonishment, a proverb, a mockery among the peoples of which Yahweh drives you. You must take much seed out into the field, but gather little in, for the locust consumes it. The plant vineyards and shall labor, but you neither drink of the wine nor gather, for the worm eats it. You have olive trees in all of your borders, but do not anoint with oil, for the olives drop off. You bring forth sons and daughters, but they are not with you, for they go into captivity. Locusts possess all the trees and the fruit of your ground. The sojourner who is among you rises higher and higher above you, but you come down lower and lower. He lends to you, but you do not lend to him. He is the head, and you are the tail. And all these curses shall come upon you, and they shall pursue and overtake you until you are destroyed, because you did not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim to guard his commands and his laws which he has commanded you. And they shall be upon you for a sign and for a wonder, and on your seed forever.
Amen. Amen. Okay, and our final reader is going to be Rabbi Tom. Is it going to be better if he comes up here in the front for the camera? Tom, do you want to just... Okay, come back around over here. Okay, good. He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, may he bless Rabbi Tom, who's come up to honor Yahweh in the Torah. May the set apart one bless him and his family, and send blessing and prosperity in all the works of his hands. Amen. Okay, Rabbi Tom's going to finish up today's readings by taking us from verse 47 to the end of chapter 28.
Thank you. Because you did not serve Yahweh your Elohim with joy and gladness of heart for all the plenty, you shall serve your enemies, whom Yahweh sends against you, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in need of all. He shall put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you. Yahweh shall bring a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies, a nation whose language you shall not understand. a fierce-looking nation, which shall show no regard for the elderly, nor show favor to the young. And they shall eat the fruit of your livestock and the fruit of your land until you are destroyed. They leave you no grain, nor wine, nor oil, nor the increase of your cattle, or the offspring of your flocks, until they have destroyed you. They shall besiege you at all your gates until your high and fenced walls, in which you are trusting, come down in all your land. They shall besiege you at all your gates in all your land, which Yahweh your Elohim has given you. And you shall eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of your sons and your daughters, whom Yahweh your Elohim has given you, in the siege and distress in which your enemies distress you. The man among you who is tender and who is very delicate, his eye is evil against his brother, against the wife of his bosom, against the rest of his children whom he leaves behind, against giving any of them the flesh of his children that he eats, because it is all that has been left to him in the siege and distress with which your enemy distresses you in all your gates. The tender and delicate woman among you, who has not tried to set the sole of her foot on the ground because of her delicateness and tenderness, her eye is evil against the husband of her bosom, and against her son, and against her daughter, and against her seed which comes out from between her feet, and her children whom she bears, for she eats them in secret for lack of all, in the siege and distress with which your enemy distresses you in all your gates. If you do not guard to do all the words of this Torah, which are written in this book, to fear this esteemed and awesome name, Yahweh your Elohim, then Yahweh shall bring upon you and your descendants extraordinary plagues, great and lasting plagues, and grievous and lasting sickness. And he shall bring back on you all the diseases of Mitzrayim, of which you were afraid, and they shall cling to you. Also every sickness and every plague which is not written in the book of this Torah, Yahweh does bring upon you until you are destroyed. And you shall be left with few men, although you had become as numerous as the stars of the heavens, because you did not obey the voice of Yahweh your Elohim. And it shall be that as Yahweh rejoiced over you to do good and increase you, so Yahweh does rejoice over you to destroy you and lay you waste. And you shall be plucked from off the land which you go to possess. And Yahweh shall scatter you among all peoples from one end of the earth to the other. And there you shall serve other mighty ones, which neither you nor your fathers have known, wood and stone. And among those nations you are to find no rest, nor have a resting place for the sole of your foot. But there Yahweh shall give you a trembling heart, failing eyes, and sorrow of being. And your life shall be hanging in suspense before you, and you shall fear night and day, and not be certain of your life. In the morning you say, oh, that it were evening. And at evening you say, oh, that it were morning, because of the fear of your heart, with which you fear, because of the sight which your eyes see. And Yahweh shall bring you back to Mitzrayim in ships, by a way of which I said to you, you are never to see it again. And there you shall be sold to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one to buy. Okay. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father and our King, Abba Yahweh, we thank you for the words which have been read here by various people. Father, it strengthens us and gives us delight to hear your Torah and to read your Torah. And Father, we know that somehow we've we've managed to please you by obeying this. And Father, somehow we know that this gets us together in unity, together in oneness, in obedience to your commands. And Father, that's the only true unity there is, to obey your Torah. We thank you, Father, for the words of this Torah. Father, we pray that we can take heed to the warnings and admonition that were in this final chapter that we read today, so that we do not bring upon ourselves the curses, but through our obedience to you and love for you, that we bring upon ourselves the blessings. We ask you to hear and accept this prayer, B'Shem Yeshua, Meshikenu, in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah and Redeemer. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank all the readers for participating. Really appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. So if anybody needs to use the restroom or any other thing that you need to do quickly, and then we'll be back in here to begin the discussion of what we read, the Midrash part, where we discuss the word of Yahweh. We have a 5-minute break. go ahead and get back in our seats. And we're going to go ahead and get started with the discussion portion of this. It's better. Mr. Jeff, I just noticed the cover of your Bible. I love it. Actually, it's from your notebook. It says, Notes on Life. That should actually be, instead of the scriptures, it should be like, Notes on Life. Human Being Owner's Manual. We may have to make our own translation. We'll call it that. Owner's Manual. Human Being Owner's Manual. That's right, one each. There you go. All right. A couple of quick announcements real quickly before we go forward, just because I'll probably announce this again in the other room when we have lunch. I'll probably mention it again as we go through. So what we have on the schedule, actually I'm on, this is so sad. We have finished the whole first page of the schedule. You want to start again? Let's do a do-over. Because I had a few people say, can we do this another week? Can we make it 2 weeks? You can stay as long as you want. We can't call it Sukkot, though, but we can stay as long as you want. All right, so on the schedule, we have a seat making class today in the afternoon. Okay, seat making class in the afternoon, followed by a group discussion. We were going to talk about some things about people that have been moving to the area and some plans for building a place where we can do things as far as our own feast site, community side of things, and that kind of stuff. So people have expressed an interest in talking about those things. And we're going to do that right in here after the CC class. Now, I believe the CC class, we're going to be doing it in the other building because we're going to need tables to do it on. So the CC making class will be in the dining hall, all right? And so, Marty, we're going to need, with you and Robert the Shamashim, to set the screen back up. I think Shira likes to play the video. And we'll use my laptop, I guess, to do that. So we'll get that worked out. All right, so we have CC class today in the afternoon. We've got our shofar clinic tomorrow in the afternoon, and then we'll follow that up with our dance instruction class. We'll have a dance class after that. So let me just make sure I've written that on my thing here. Okay. Yesterday I had a really fabulous opportunity to do a Facebook video little conference with my good friend Curtis Reed down in New Zealand, and he was with Brad Scott. And so we had a wonderful conversation. They send their love and their greetings and a Chag Sameach to all of you. So that's, okay. So they're down under, and they're having a great time. There's about 200 plus people there as well, and everything is going as it should. Everybody's being blessed, and it's having a good time, and they're learning, and they're growing, and they're building the bonds of relationships of family. So I just wanted to share that with you. You know, it's always surreal for me to have those conversations and how easy the technology allows those conversations with people so far away. And I didn't understand maybe fully how far away that was till I got on a plane and flew there and realized I lost a day somewhere. It felt like more like 2 because I lost a day and I was on the plane for a day. So it really was very far away. So anyway, so greetings to you from the people in New Zealand who are celebrating Sukkot. All right. So now, that being said, there was one more announcement I wanted to make. For those of you, how many of you wanted to mikvah? We didn't get to do that the other day. All right, so there's a possibility that it's actually going to stop raining. I know it will because I don't think it's going to be another flood. He promised he wouldn't do that. So I'm pretty sure it's going to stop raining at some point. Actually, it's not raining very much now, but boy, is it foggy. I mean, we're talking thick fog. Okay, so we are going to be able to hopefully do tomorrow morning. I expect to finish the Deuteronomy readings, and what we can possibly do in finishing the Deuteronomy readings, if we're willing to minimize the Midrash part, we can go ahead and do the mikvah after the readings before lunch. Okay, because like right now it is 11:30. We don't have lunch until 1 o'clock. So we still would have time to do some midrashing and still have time to go and give people time to go get changed and get back and have lunch at 1. So, because we only have a couple of more chapters to go, I think we can get them all covered tomorrow. And so if we do that, then we should be able to have the mikvah either tomorrow or then on Thursday. Now, Thursday's the only day that's sunny, because I'm not sure how it's going to play out. Then it's also appropriate to mikvah on a holy day. After all, what would be more appropriate than to make a focused commitment and declarations to our King on one of his days? Okay, so if we don't get it done tomorrow, okay, we can clap for that. Actually, I can't check the weather because I turned off my Wi-Fi not to mess up the stream, so I won't do that. Actually, I'd be pulling it off my phone, not the Wi-Fi, because I'm not on the Wi-Fi. Let me see. Yeah, it looks like Thursday's the one sunny day. Okay, so if we can't do it tomorrow, because the weather's never exactly what they predict it to be. If it can work out for tomorrow, great. If it can't, Thursday's supposed to be sunny, no clouds. It's just going to be a beautiful day. Then it gets cloudy again on Friday, but no rain. So hopefully we'll be able to get this done Thursday. Okay. So let me explain how this gets done. We're going to have an open discussion from Deuteronomy chapter 22 through chapter 28. And we would like to start with the stuff in 22, 23 before we get to 27, 28. Kind of keep a chronological flow because we've seen and you all know that Abba builds things in a chronological manner, progressive manner. So sometimes you may have a question about something in 27 or 28 that was actually needing something in 24 or 25 to understand so we can kind of move our way forward through it. So if you have a comment or question, we have, who's got the mics? Okay, we got Dale has a mic, and who's got the other one? Nobody. Okay, let's get a second guy to come up. Nate, you want to grab the other mic? Or you want to you got a comment or question? Here, no, Dale's got one. Here's the other one. It's coming up to you. Okay, so we got 2 mics. So if we could have Dale be on one side, Nate on the other, or one in the front, one in the back, however you want to do it. Okay? And so what we're going to do is if you have a comment or question, and if you're on the live stream, that's being manned by Kurt, right? Kurt, you got the live stream chat? Okay. So you can type that in, and we will try to get to all of the comments and questions. Of course, we have, a good number of people here. How many do we have online right now? We had almost 100 computers logged on online, plus about 100 of you here, because I know we have a lot of the children, which is almost 100 in another building. And so that's a good over 200 or more people. That could be a lot of comments and questions. So if you don't get to yours, please don't be offended. If we don't get to yours, don't be offended. We'll try. Because what might happen is somebody might bring something up that's really important that we all discuss, and everybody wants to jump in, and then we don't have enough time for as many questions. But it was good that we got to discuss whatever it is that took more time. I will try to regulate that from the podium. Okay? Now, when the questions are asked, everybody is welcome and encouraged. If you want to participate in that one question, you can also raise your hand to give your input or feedback or insight to whatever the topic is that the person who initiated the question did. Okay, we're going to begin over here with Amy.
In 22:19, would that wife have been able to request a divorce?
Okay, so in Deuteronomy 22 and in verse 19. Okay. And by the way, thank you, Amy, for standing up. If you do ask a question, because we have the cameras on, it does make it easier if you actually stand when you ask your question. Okay, if you don't want to be on the camera, then duck down when you ask your question. I'm kidding. All right, 22:19. Okay, so here's what we're talking about. And this is going to open up the whole discussion. Okay. But that's okay. It's in my notes that's kind of something we need to talk about. But we may have to wait a minute or two because there's several verses to deal with this. What is the phrase, first of all? Well, first of all, the question is, can the woman request it too? Whatever's going on that the man can do, the woman can do it also when it comes to the husband-wife relationship. Now, it's written, remember, the book is written instructionally to men. Don't be offended, ladies. That was society at the time. That is the vertical hierarchy that it's supposed to go from the Creator through the man to the wife. And so the book itself was expected to be read by the men and shared then with their wives and their children. So it was not to be just available necessarily just to everybody. It was supposed to go down that chain. So even the instructions about women were given to the men to then share with the women. Okay, that was part of establishing the proper roles. All right? But then in doing so, it doesn't always have the other half, which is what's the reciprocal of this? Can a woman do any of these things? I promise you, women, you do not have a lesser standing. You have a different role. You are equally valued. You are equally important. You are equally everything, whatever you want to fill in the equal. And it's in the decision-making processes and responsibilities that there are differences. Not unequal, just differences. Hopefully that makes some sense. And one day we'll talk more about the roles of the women and the roles of men so that there is no dishonoring of either. Okay? But now when we're dealing with this issue, what we're going to find is in Deuteronomy, we've been reading this phrase that he is not allowed to put her away. And we see this word phrase, putting away, and somebody read it, when you read it, it said divorce. Terrible translation. Okay, it doesn't say divorce. It says put away. That's what the Hebrew means. When you go to chapter 24 and verse 1, that's when we find the idea of divorce. See, because in verse 1 it says, when a man takes a wife and shall marry her, then it shall be if she finds no favor in his eyes, because he's found a matter of uncoveredness in her, he shall write her a certificate of divorce. Okay, it's a sefer kritut, if I can remember correctly, the Hebrew. So he's going to write her a certificate of divorce. So now, the certificate of divorce, and this is where we get all complicated. I'm going to make it very simple. You're not going to agree with me, all of you. That's okay. There's a teaching I did called Divorce, Remarriage, and Putting Away. You need to listen to the teaching. It's only one part. So don't say, well, I don't like those multi-part things. This is only one. Okay? I don't know. Most of the people that come up to me, all their favorites are the multi-part ones, so maybe that's even better. But this one was one, so don't be intimidated. But you must understand that in Hebrew and in Greek, there are different phrases, different words for two different concepts, the concept of putting away and the concept of divorce. And so when you read these things, we have been abused, we have been attacked, we have been pounded on, we have been shunned by people who did not understand Hebrew or Greek, but have been continuing a process that came down through the early church fathers and the churches on how they would handle these concepts. How many of you know people or have experienced yourself, so you don't have to say which it is, people that have absolutely been shunned, attacked, and just abused in every possible way because they've been divorced or because they've been remarried? Almost everybody, okay? Because this is one of those things that has been used in a totally horrific way. What you have to understand that putting away is like scarlet letter. It's a public marking of shame. Okay, so notice what the putting away is. The putting away is, in the verses I was talking about, is when he says in chapter 22, if this is the situation, you cannot put her away. You cannot shame her. He says, and the elders of the city shall take the man and punish him and fine him and give the daughter's father of the young woman the silver. And he says, and she shall be his wife, and he is not allowed to put her away. He cannot publicly shame her and put her away. It does not say that God or Yahweh hates divorce. Not anywhere in your Bible. Yes, it does, Rabbi. I have it right here. It says Yahweh hates divorce. No, that's your translation in English. What he hates is putting away. What he hates is putting away. The difference between putting away and divorce is that divorce is a putting out or away with a letter declaring that that person is free and without shame to go and move on with their life. That's why it says a certificate in chapter 24. If you notice that it said a matter of uncleanness is found. That, by the way, matches some of the things you see in Matthew and other places where Yeshua is talking. Now, he can decide if it's a public shaming. Do you notice that when there was do you remember a guy named Yosef and he had a wife, Miriam? Anybody remember that couple? And she somehow was pregnant before they were married. They were engaged, and it said in that verse, he wanted to do what? Put her away how? Quietly. Why would they need to tell us he was doing it quietly? Because normally it was not done quietly. He loved her so much, he wanted to put her away without the public shaming. Because the woman who was put away would never be allowed to marry again. They were marked, and the community would know. That's why they needed to have a certificate. The certificate, the get said, I have freely released this woman to now go and live without shame in any which manner she wanted. If she wants to stay single, fine. If she wants to meet another man and get married, that's fine. The certificate sets her free of the contractual obligations without any shame. Of course, this has been used by the church, as in the mainstream, to abuse people and cause tremendous amounts of shame, tremendous amounts of guilt, in an awful, awful way. I mean, hateful way, mean-spirited way. So you need to listen to the teaching. You know, some of you are going, no. You gotta, I will break down the Greek in the New Testament and the Hebrew in the Old and show you that it doesn't say what you've been told it says. All right? How many of you heard the teaching? Do you agree with what I just said? Okay? It will change. Did it not change your whole perspective? All right? And it's not because I'm such a genius, but that's part of why you need a teacher, to help break down things for you. Because we are so used to what we've always been told, only to find out. Listen, this is not the first thing. Have you all, since you've come out and are now here, is one of the reasons you're here because you found out that something you were always told was not correct? So why are you surprised that this may be another one of those things? See, you want to hold on to stuff. You want to hold on to stuff. Let's have fun for a second. Okay, we're going to play a game. A lot of you have already played this game. We're going to play a quick game. All right? First of all, I just want to make sure. How many of you don't like to raise your hand? Ah, there you go. 1, 2. I always get 2. And now they'll never raise it again. Okay. Camera wasn't on you. It's okay. All right. Have you ever been wrong? Okay. All right, so you were wrong. Now, when you were wrong, was it ever a time when you knew that you knew? Bet the house, put your life on it. You knew that you knew, and you were still wrong. Usually that happens with husbands and wives. And boy, that ain't pretty when the one has to admit they were wrong and the other one goes, uh-huh. But just remember, if you're the one going, uh-huh, next time it might be you. And then, you're going to have to take the other side of that. All right. Any chance that might happen again? So let's remember what we all just confessed in public. You've been wrong. You've been wrong when it was something, you just thought you knew it, and you were still wrong, and you just admitted it absolutely is going to happen again. It's likely to happen again. So with that being the case, when you were wrong on the previous thing, could you see that coming any which way, anything? There was any possibility you could see that coming. So remember, the next one that comes, you are not going to see it coming either. So let's be real careful how tightly we hold on to some of the concepts and things that we've been taught in terms of how we interact with our brother. You should hold on to tightly what you're taught and what you understand for your own walk and be open to be shown that there may be something wrong there. But let's not beat our brothers up. See, this is what got me to do the teaching. I knew a lady in particular, and several people, a lady in particular that was absolutely wreaking havoc in anybody's life that she would come in contact with and find out that they had been divorced and now they're remarried. Literally putting people into shameful, they were ashamed of themselves. They were in tears. They thought they had to break up that marriage. They thought they were in sin. They thought all of these things that are just not true. They're just not true. And I said, I have to set this straight and do the teaching. So that's why we have the teaching. So just realize there are going to be things still, even though you've come out of a lot, you haven't let it all go, I promise you. There's still stuff that you're going to have to realize is not what you always believed it to be. And that's going to be tough. This is one of them. So you need to know, you can go listen to teaching, that there's a difference. This is all you need to know today between putting away and divorce. Divorce has a piece of it. The word for putting away is connected to divorce. In other words, you're putting them out of your house, sending them on their way. That's what the Hebrew actually means, to send them out, away. You're putting them out. But putting them out with a certificate is very different than just putting them out. So notice where it says putting away and where it says a certificate with the putting away. That's divorce. Okay, divorce is legal. It's done in a legal way. It has all kinds of laws related to it so that you have to do it in a proper manner. Okay, even in the USA or in any of the countries you live in, most likely if you separate, you cannot remarry unless you have a legal separation. There has to be forms filed and papers there so that people are on notice that you are now free to do the next thing you need to do. There's no longer an obligation between you and the other person. Okay? Because otherwise, what would happen? You could go, without that process, you could go and get married after separating, and the other person can come back and say, excuse me, but we're married. And you have an obligation that you committed to. I have a contract here. It's called a marriage certificate. We are married. We have a contract. That's a problem. So you need to have the legal separation so that you can show, actually, no, remember we signed this and we did the legal thing, and I have no obligation to you. You set me free. I set you free. Now we move on. Okay? All right. So thank you for bringing it up, Amy. It's good. It was going to be brought up somewhere. I thought by maybe verse 1 of chapter 24, but certainly earlier. So that was a good question. That was an important one that was on my list. Okay, who's next? Okay, in the back, Kurt.
Okay, in lines with the divorce, I think it's Yanni's her name.
You got to put it right in your mouth, buddy.
Thought I had it. Can a woman just leave a home and wait for divorce from the man if he forbid her to keep Torah, or should she file for a divorce?
Okay, really, really important. Okay, I'm going to say something that's really important. Number one, all of you, please never, ever give across-the-board advice when it comes to marriages and divorce. Because without exception, every relationship has its unique pieces. So I will never answer a direct question like that to say this is what you should do, because others may read that into their own situation. If you contact me privately and I can get the details, I can give you advice and counsel. But we're not going to say, under this, this, and this, you should definitely get a divorce, or this, and this, you shouldn't. I don't have enough information just from one person giving me a little bit, and others will take that, try to apply it to their situation when it doesn't necessarily apply properly. You understand what I'm saying? You cannot one size fits all a question like, my husband forbids me to keep Torah. Well, not everybody with their husband has the same situation. Some husbands who forbid their wives to keep Torah may still be willing to sit down and counsel. Others may not. There's lots of other things that could be involved here. So what I would say to the person online is contact us directly when it's not Sukkot, and we can help you through the counseling process of coming to, by the way, in the counseling process, I do not tell you what to do. I will give you counsel, and you have to decide what you do. This is not a cult. This is not a dictatorship. Nobody has to just do whatever I say. What you need to do is whatever he says. I will give you some counsel on how to understand what he said. Then you can make your choices. Okay? So when you come to me, some of you are like, but I don't know what to do, just tell me. So, I understand how much easier that might be. I can't do that. Remember what I put in one of the teachings. Making decisions is the reason you're here. It's the reason you exist. Abba wants to watch you make choices. Now, getting counsel is a choice. That's a good choice, to go get counsel. But then what you do with the counsel is up to you. Okay, now we did read in Deuteronomy 17, there may be something that comes up where it's actually in black and white. Okay? Should I go to that wedding on Shabbat? And I will tell you, No. Now, what you do with that is up to you. But there's some things that are much more nuanced, like should I get a divorce? Well, that's up to you. If you want, do you have reason and cause, and is that what you want? And there's a lot more to it than that, obviously. That's not something I could just say, yes, you need to do this. There are thou shalts and thou shalt nots. Now, when it comes to divorce or separation, there's not a whole lot in the divorce category that says, if this is there, you have to get a divorce. Do you know if you commit adultery on your spouse, you can still stay married? Because you could forgive that. And you can choose not to have them taken out, stoned, and the whole thing. You can choose that. Or you can turn them in, and there was law for that. Because you even see Hosea being told to go marry a woman who was not going to be faithful to him. She was already a prostitute, and she was not going to be faithful. But yet, he never turned her in to get killed, and he didn't ever divorce her. And so you have options available, but not obligations on how you have to handle it. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? Are we getting somewhere close? All right, Kurt?
Okay, same person, same topic. The teachings don't say a woman can file for divorce or walk away. Is that the case?
No, the verses themselves do not mention the woman having the right to do these things. But I'm just going to tell you, from my opinion, from all of the centuries of application of the Torah by the Jewish community, the woman can do these things. You remember, we're dealing with instruction to a society that was very male dominant. The women basically didn't have a whole lot to say about anything. But that's not because they were of lesser value, but because the men were supposed to be doing all the right things and covering them. Of course, then there was ways to handle that, and that's where the elders would have been aware of it. And the elders would have said, excuse me, sir, we need to have a talk. We've noticed how you're treating your wife. This is not appropriate. We need to talk to you. Sit down. That's part of what the role of the elders, the leadership of the community, were to do. They were there to bring another covering or protection over the women. Okay? Because there aren't going to necessarily be perfect men, but hopefully within the abundance of counsel of the leadership of men, they can be there to cover when there's a problem with the men. If there's a problem with the woman, we have instruction. That's part of what we have in the Torah. Why is it that way? I have no idea. He did it. I just have to accept it and move on. But ladies, please know that you are not restrained from being able to do what's necessary to come out, to separate, especially when it's abusive. Because I know a lot of people were told in the churches they were in that, again, how many of you either to yourselves or know people that were forced, quote unquote, by their churches to stay in a marriage that was awful and abusive? Okay? Because the women were basically told, you're stuck. Too bad on you. Now, holistic approach, right? I talked about, I'm a puzzle guy. We like to put the puzzle together. What's one of the rules of putting a puzzle together? You don't leave any pieces in the box. They have to all fit together. So what's an important piece of the puzzle when you ask the question, what about the women? The important piece is Yah a respecter of persons? No. Does he rule with equity? So everything's done with fairness. So would it be a respecter of persons and unfair that the woman couldn't do this? Of course it would. It would be respecting the man above the woman and would not be equitable or with fairness if the woman did not have an option to get out. So we have other verses. Does that make sense? See, that's part of the holistic approach. You have to approach this book and everything in this whole, you've got thousands of pages here. You got almost 1,200 pages in this particular translation, the way they lay it out. It all has to fit. Okay, it all has to fit together. Okay, next question. Okay, Ollie?
Deuteronomy 22, 9 to 11.
Yep.
There are three issues that seem to be connected a little bit, but what exactly do they mean?
Okay. And by the way, if you can all keep ticking off my checklist in order like you're doing right now, that would be great. Okay. Just check them off. I had that one out. Literally, 29, 9 to 22, 9 to 11. All right, so that's what we're talking about, the mixing of stuff. Okay, we're talking about the mixing of stuff. So let's first and foremost understand something called pardes. How many of you know what that is? Pardes. Okay? But it's really PRDS. But they turned it into an acronym so you can pronounce it, pardes. Okay? So, how many of you don't know what that is? Good, more than half the room. Let's talk about that. Very important concept. Let's start with something as I lead into this. You have to understand, if you're going to be successful, I mean, you don't have to. You can just completely disagree with me. But I'd love you to understand that your Jewish brothers are very different in their study and their understanding of the word than your Christian brothers. They study differently. They've got a different background. So when you think you came from a place, and I used to meet people, oh man, you should come to my church. We study the word. And we know the word. I mean, we study our Bible, and they don't have a clue what they're reading. They don't, because they were not taught how to understand what they're reading. They don't have the tools for it, and the background, and mostly they're leaving most of the left of the book out. From Matthew on, they have, but from the left of Matthew all the way to Genesis, they don't have such a good understanding. When your Jewish brothers study the word, I mean, they are looking for every linkage, every connection. They understand the Hebrew. They're understanding all of these things, the idiomatic phrases. They will study and study and study and spend all of the time that you may study on a chapter, they're still on like a sentence. A lot of the brothers who are studying. So when we try to compare apples and apples, thinking when we compare some of the issues with Christianity with the issues with Judaism, understand that your brothers have different problems and different issues. The Jewish community is not perfect, and they have issues. So now when they study, they have come up with some insights that they see in the Scripture. One of the things that they have seen, and this is their opinion, is that the Scripture seems to be written on at least 4 levels of understanding. And they're described as Peshat, Ramez, Drash, and Sod. That's Pardes. Peshat. And I love when people ask me how to spell these things. They're transliterations. Spell it any way you want. It makes it sound like Peshat. How do you spell that? It doesn't matter. It's not an English word. It's a Hebrew word. It's commonly spelled P-A-S-H-A-T. Okay, Peshat. Then you have Remez, R-E-M-E-Z. Okay, Drash, D-R-A-S-H. And Sod, S-O-D. Okay, that's the most common way it's done. And so the acronym is Pardes. By the way, how many of you own or know what the word Tanakh is? You're familiar with Tanakh. Tanakh is not a word. How many of you knew that? Okay, how many of you didn't know that? Okay, yeah, Tanakh is not a word. It's an acronym. 3 letters. Okay, T-N-K. Tanakh is Torah, the first 5 books. Nevi'im, the prophets, and Ketuvim, the writings. Tanakh. Okay? And so you have an acronym that we think of as a word. Okay, but it's not a word. Okay, so Pardes. So what's the importance of all this in getting to the question about the mixing? Well, the importance is that we have to start with understanding these 4 levels. So Peshat is, to make it simple, is that it's the simple. It's the simple, straightforward understanding. So when you read, do not murder, that doesn't need a whole lot more depth. It means do not murder. By the way, you might need to dig into it because it doesn't mean do not kill. Otherwise, why are they being told to stone people all over the place? It means do not murder. So you actually got that yesterday, or well, not yesterday, the day before when we did the readings, because yesterday we didn't. But the day before when we were doing the readings, what did we discover in the readings? We discovered that it was said, if a person accidentally killed somebody, there was a sanctuary city to run off to, not the kind they're trying to set up here in the United States. Okay? The cities where they can run to, if I'm chopping and the axe handle, stayed in my hand and the head of it flew off and hit you and killed you, that was not murder, but I did kill you. Then it said, what if the person laid in wait? Well, that was murder. So commandment number 6 is thou shalt not murder, not thou shalt not kill. Okay. So, Peshat, the simple, straightforward, literal understanding of the verse. Which, by the way, some things are said in Scripture that you can't do the Peshat because we have no idea what they're talking about. Some of them are very simple. Okay, Remez, the hinted at. Okay, I'm just really making the simple way to describe it, but it's the hinted at. So it's not just what it says, but what is it hinting at? So even the verses that talk about with the men, with the issues with the wives, there is a hint that the wives can do these things as well. It's not in the verse itself, but you understand through society, through the not respecting of persons and all these other things, that there's pieces that would say that it's reasonable and logical to connect a dot. It's a connecting of a dot, that something may be hinting about something else. Then the drash is the allegorical. Okay, it's the allegorical understanding. And so we do that when we midrash. We discuss, we try to understand the application of things. And then the sod is the deeper or the hidden. Okay, the things that Abba might decide to reveal in its more higher depth. You know what's almost considered a sod? As you kind of actually, a little of all of this. What did Yeshua do when he started his ministry? He said, you heard of old not to commit adultery. And so the problem was they were doing that in Peshat. The guys are all walking around going, well, I haven't slept with her. And Yeshua is saying, but you wanted to. He's saying there's deeper stuff to this. And you could see the hint of it. You could see the allegorical as well as the sod. If you lusted after her, it's as if you've done it. You wanted to do it. Just because you didn't actually do it, that breaks the spirit of the law. Okay, so you need more layers than just Peshat to get there. So you don't want to stop at Peshat. Now, one of the other rules of Pardes is this. As you're digging into a verse and you're going beyond the Peshat, you can never go so far into it that the Peshat no longer is recognizable. So I'll say that again. You can't take it so far in extrapolating it out that the Peshat no longer even is there. The Peshat has to always be there. Because I've seen people take stuff and take it so far off in a direction that it's no longer connected to the Peshat. So you can't do that. People do, but you shouldn't. Let's put it that way. It's wrong to do that. Okay, how would you know? You need a teacher or a counselor to help you realize you maybe have taken it too far. Because you have to go back. The way you would know, though, is remember always as you're going, don't ever forget the Peshat. And ask yourself, can I still recognize the Peshat and where I've taken this? So can I still recognize that from where I've taken this? Okay? But so always start with the Peshat. A lot of people want to rush quickly into Remez and Sod. They skip Drash because Drash means you actually have to apply it. Okay? But they want to know what it's hinting at and what's the secret stuff. Well, let's start with what it actually says part. Remember we had the rule for midrashing was let's first agree to what it actually says. That's the Peshat, really. What does it actually say? The Remez would be, and the drashic part, those other three, is when you now have the freedom to tell me why you think it's there and what it means. See, that was actually the essence of what I gave in those instructions when we started on the first day. We first agree to what the verse says, and then we can discuss what we each individually may interpret it means and how to apply it. Now we're into Remez, Drash, and Sod. You see what we're doing? Now let's take that into verse 9. We're in chapter 22. Do not sow your vineyard with different kinds of seed, lest the yield of the seed which you have sown and the fruit of your vineyard be defiled. Do not plow with an ox and a donkey together. Do not put on a garment of different kinds of wool and linen together. So, the literal says, literally, let's just take the last one first, because that's something sometimes gets, not everybody has a field, and not everybody has an ox and a donkey, but everybody, I believe, wears clothing. Okay, we're good. Some of the people online were going, okay. Shame on you. Okay. Everybody's wearing clothing. So some of you may be concerned, what do I do as far as materials with that are mixed materials? So what's the literal, the Peshat? It says, do not mix wool and linen. So on the Peshat, it's talking about wool and linen. Now, you can remez and say, well, does that have to do with, is it hinting at going into any things that are mixed cloth? Well, you may need to go back to the Peshat and say, well, why? Why wool and linen? Is this specifically about that? Is there a problem with wool and linen being together? Or it's just using wool and linen as a random two things that they could have picked, wool and cotton, or could it be two other things? But why wool and linen? See, now we're learning how to study. We're going to start to break something down. It's a good question. It was on my list because it helps us to look at Scripture in a very good way of trying to break things down. So the first thought is, he says not to wear linen and wool together. He says not to mix the different kinds, but he gives us a specific one. And so why that? Anybody have an answer for that? Why not wool and linen? Okay, Nate, you got the mic. You might as well answer.
Doesn't wool shrink? It can shrink, and the materials will not mesh together when they start to change their sizes with changes in weather and so on.
Okay, anybody agree with that? Does wool and linen shrink differently? Okay, it does. So that could be one of the reasons. That may not necessarily, just because you have a reason doesn't mean it's the fullness. So maybe there's more. So let's ask if there's more. Anybody want to add to that? Okay, and give it to your wife. She's got her hand up and she's standing next to you. Okay, Dawn.
I know that they have different frequencies, and I know that wool's got a frequency of 5,000, linen's got a frequency of 5,000, and they're both healing when you wear them separately. But when you put them together, they cancel each other out, and it diminishes your ability to fight off disease and things like that. It kind of renders you open to sickness.
Okay, how many of you knew that? Okay, how many of you that was the point you were going to make? There was a couple of hands. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. And this is not all New Agey, okay? Science is actually showing us the Bible is true. Okay? Science is more and more, let me get a sip here. Science is more and more showing us things like, do you know that quantum physicists and that whole realm are now absolutely convinced that the visible came from the invisible? Wait a minute, Genesis chapter 1. Why took them so long? They also are now in agreement with each other, not necessarily with us, that sound brought it all into existence. Okay, Genesis chapter 1. So science is starting to come around to back up, even though they're not intending to, our book. Because they believe that the dark matter, and dark energy and stuff you can't see, that's the only way they can describe it because they don't know what else to do, that there's something they can't see is affecting what they can see. Anybody know that already? There's stuff we can't see that's affecting what we can see? All right, so science has ways of measuring frequency. Everything that exists vibrates. Everything. Even this metal podium. Okay? It doesn't matter how solid it is, it's actually vibrating. And so the frequency that things vibrate at have effect on other things that are also vibrating. All right? Did you ever notice that you could be either resting or half asleep with your eyes closed, hear nothing, and feel somebody near you? Or did you ever feel someone looking at you? Because there's energy going past your body. There's energy that vibration gives off a certain amount of energy, and that energy interacts with the energy of other people. Do you ever notice that someone could come in a room and change the whole dynamic of the room, either lift it up or move it down or make it angry or whatever? Because their energy is they're so emotionally strong, their energy is exploding out of them and affecting everybody around them. Now, notice that the priests were told to wear what? Linen, okay? So the science tells us that the linen has a very high vibrational content. Science also tells us that when the vibration is low, that's where things like disease and bacteria and viruses love to be. In high levels of vibration, they can't function. So the idea when you say, I feel a little run down, well, that's when those things are going to be able to get to you because your vibration is low. When you're at that low energy, when you've overworked yourself, overstressed yourself, guess what happens? It's like you feel like your battery is low. How often do you get sick when that's happening? Now, how often do you get sick when you're totally up and going and boom, boom, boom? Almost never, okay? And so could it be because linen and wool have equal but opposite vibrations? Opposite not meaning one is good and one is bad, but in the way they vibrate, when they come together, they actually neutralize each other. They cancel each other out. So whatever benefit either one would have is not there anymore. And so he's simply saying that you don't mix things together, that, listen now, this is going to help them with all these who are trying to get it. Now we're going to go into remez and a little bit different, go deeper. Could it be saying that when you mix two things together that neutralize or hinder the benefit that each one had, by bringing them together, you shouldn't mix them together? So now look at the previous verse. Don't plow with an ox and donkey. What happens when you plow with an ox and donkey? It isn't going to work very well. You're not going to get a straight line. Okay? They're not going to pull together. In other words, the ox can do great and the donkey can do great. But they kind of negate the value they bring if you put them together. Okay? Same thing then with the vineyard. If you mix the seed, and I know people like to think, well, he's talking about GMO here or some other things. And by the way, he could have been. Whatever he's talking about, he's saying when you mix the seed, you're going to take away from the value and benefit that the seed had before you mixed it. And so this is important. All right? So when we're wearing, polyester and cotton mixes and stuff, well, that's not what it's talking about here. What he's talking about is wool and linen. He's also giving us a concept that we can apply in other areas about mixing things, that when you mix them, it takes away the value and the benefit that each one had separately that you lost when you mix. Some things actually, when you bring them together, they enhance. He's talking about be careful of the things that when you bring them together, they lose some of their benefit. Okay, so did I help you with the question? Okay. In the back, Daweed?
Just back on the wool and linen for a second. Animal fibers tend to retain water, but they don't rot by the water. Whereas plant fibers, if they get water on them, they tend to dry out faster than animal fibers, and so they remain drier, but if they remain in water for a very long time, they tend to rot faster. So, and this is borne out by the Bedouin when they have their goat hair tents. When the water hits the goat hair's fibers swell up, and then they end up, in essence, becoming waterproof. Where it becomes linen and wool, well, if you put wool and then the wool gets wet, the wool retains the water, but the plant fiber, or in this case the linen, doesn't. It can't abide the water moisture content, so it ends up tending to rot faster. So you end up having a garment that just falls apart faster. So that's the one of the points, and it could very well have something to do with the vibrations as well in that.
Okay, and again, let's take the vibration part out of it and say here's another reason that two things that have their benefit. The linen has a benefit of drying quickly, okay? It breathes in a much better way than the wool. The wool has a benefit that when you want something that's going to be more insulating and keep you warmer and not breathe as well and have the protectiveness when it deals with moisture. So they're going to deal with things differently. You mix them together and you're now hurting each one's ability to do the thing it benefits you. Okay? So it's counterproductive in putting it together because now you no longer get the benefit of the wool and the benefit of the linen for the things of the advantages that they bring. And so he's saying, look at the things in your life that you're mixing. So now let's talk about don't be unequally yoked with a non-believer. Okay? Because if you're yoked, if you're just like the ox and the donkey, can you go straight together? Then take another verse. Two cannot walk unless they are in agreement about how they walk. You can't walk together with someone if you don't have agreement. You may be walking, but you ain't together. And so things don't get done, do they? And so all of these things do fit together when we start to add them together and piece it. So start with the Peshat, and then say, okay, what else is it trying to tell me? What's it hinting at? That's the Remez. How do I apply this in my life? That would be more the Drash. And then, hey, is there anything really deeper that's underlying all of this that I might be able to glean? And by the way, don't focus on the Sod out of order. You really should go through it in order. Go through from Peshat to Remez to Drash to Sod. Don't go from Peshat for 3 seconds right to Sod. I want to know what the magical, secret, super Gnostic, thing that's going to make me feel smarter than everybody piece is. Stop that. Okay? You don't need the Sod part. You need the first 3. Okay? You don't need the Sod part. Okay, well, who's next in the back? Okay, I got 2 hands. I got Kurt okay, so Kurt's got the mic. Okay, you got the computer?
Yeah, I got a quick one right here. So
okay. You moved and you confused me.
So on that topic, if we wear these mixed fabrics, is it no doubt a Torah violation? Is something we repent of or no longer do?
Okay, there are do's and don'ts in Scripture. If Yahweh said it, we're supposed to do it. So I would say the thing that I would make sure I'm doing is not wearing linen and wool together. I'm going to make sure that I'm not planting. Now, by the way, it says sowing a vineyard. It doesn't say anything else at this point. In this particular verse, it says vineyard. All right, so let's not mix our vineyard. Okay? Now, of course, it doesn't say what kinds of seed or the different kinds of seed that we're mixing in that vineyard. So we're going to have to say, unfortunately, the people that were there when this was written knew what was going on, understood it, and we don't. And so we'd have to go and seek, probably a good thing to do is seek our Jewish brothers and say, how have you understood this for the last 3,000 years? Okay? How have you known this to be? But in the meantime, we can certainly not plow with an ox and a donkey. All right? So I would say yes. If you're wearing linen and wool together, stop. And repentance is not a You can still say, I didn't know, but I'm sorry. And so I'm going to stop. I'm going to fix it. Fixing it's the point. Okay? Fixing is the point. Okay, over here. Okay, Nate?
In chapter 22, verse 1, where it talks about, you shall not see your brother's ox or his sheep going astray and hide yourself from them. You shall certainly bring them back to your brother. I was reading this at a time when we were having some issues with one of our older children seeking counsel, and they were supposedly Messianic, Torah observant.
They knew what our counsel was for our children. Could this be like the ox going to a Remez type situation, the strong one of your house, someone who is important that brings honor to your home, or even the sheep, your children in your home? Could that also be kind of related to, if you see one of your brother's children kind of going astray, it should be that you should try to help them get back to their parents, or try to, is there a correlation that could be made there?
There's a couple of correlations. Well, the first correlation is if you want to fulfill the second great command. What's the second great command? Love your neighbor as yourself. So what would you want someone to do if they saw your sheep out where it didn't need to be? you'd want them to let you know. Or go ahead and help you get it to make sure and bring it to you and say, hey, listen, you may not, look, if you see somebody's car and it's raining and their window's up, the window's down and it's raining into their car, you could just be like, oh, that was dumb, somebody left the window open. Or you can go and say, if that was me, I'd want to know, and do everything you can to find the person so that they can close their window. You might even go up to the car and see if it's open and its ability. Now, we can't do that so much anymore because of electronic windows. But back in the day, you could have gone in and just cranked it back up for them. Okay? And so so the other part of your question, when you're looking for correlation, is that we also have to realize in this is understanding our boundaries, which is not necessarily exactly what's going on here in verse 1. But if somebody comes to you looking for any kind of advice, guidance, or counsel, you should be sending them right back to where they're supposed to get it. That's the counsel you should be giving. Have you talked to your father? Have you talked to your mother? Blah, 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 blah. Well, that's all well and good, but you need to talk to them. If you can't talk to them, then you need to talk to their covering. You don't need to be talking to me. I'm not their covering, and I'm not your covering. If they're just going to somebody. Okay, because a child may feel like, and legitimately the parent may be the problem. There's a relational problem. Then the only appropriate person for that child to go to is that parent's covering. And then that parent's covering can go and sit down with the parents and with them and get this all worked out. So when children come to you, and by the way, that includes other adults. An adult comes to you looking for counsel, and you know that adult has a covering. Why are you giving that adult counsel except to go get to that covering? Because what if you're giving counsel that goes against their covering? Now you've overstepped your bounds. We'll put a different title or phrase on this. It's very important to Yahweh, from what I can tell in Scripture, that it's a really big issue when you usurp authority or a role. When you step in some place that really you're not supposed to be. You see a lot of places, and we've read it, where it says, when someone said, thus said Yahweh, when he hadn't said. Now you're usurping a role. When we saw the woman caught in adultery brought to Yeshua, wrong person, wrong, he didn't have that role. So why were they bringing her to him, right? We talked about that. Excuse me. So when you're asking the question, Nate, if you have children, and those children even go to the older children, the older child may have to say, you know, you really need to talk to dad. You really need to talk to mom. But I'm having a problem with mom and dad. Okay, then I'll go with you. And we need to sit down and talk to mom. We need to talk. That's a role of the oldest child, too. Firstborn is there to help with those children in the relationship with the parents. And I see this all the time, the firstborn dropping their role. That's a leadership role. But it's a leadership role under the parent. So it's sort of a secondary tier role in the family. So a child may go to the firstborn and say, you're the firstborn. And I'm really struggling with mom right now. What do I do? Well, we go to dad. Okay, now I'm having a problem with dad. What do? Then we all sit down together and try and work it out. Well, that's not really working out. We go to dad's covering. It's kind of like Matthew 18 in the family setting. Dad doesn't have a covering. Now you got a problem. That's part of why you need a covering. Because guess what? I know this is going to sound shocking, but the problem may be dad. It may be mom or both. And so that's why you need a covering, because if you're wrong, you need someone who can come up to you and say, well, actually, this needs to be fixed. You're not right in this one. How else are you going to grow? You need to have somebody that can tell you, and if you don't have one, get married, you'll have one. That person you marry will tell you when you're wrong. That's not right in this. And that's a good thing most of the time. Excuse me. That's a good thing most of the time. Okay, did that answer your question? Okay, on this side, Dale. And I'm going to grab a lozenge.
In 27, 2, and 4, it tells them to put plaster upon plaster on a stone. That doesn't sound to me like a permanent thing to be writing the
We
Torah on.
jumped up to 27?
27, 2, and 4. It sounds temporary.
Okay. Let's not deal with 27 right now, Amy, just simply because it's not going to be something that's going to affect what we do at the moment. It's something that's interesting and curious, but there's a bunch of things I absolutely want to cover before we finish that are in these chapters. So we'll put that. Now, if we have time, I'll get to it. Okay. Dale?
Just quickly, Rabbi, with the wool and the linen, can you give us a practical example of that?
What do you mean?
Where they're put together, where they shouldn't be.
In any clothing whatsoever. I mean, if they put clothing together. I mean, today in modern times, you're never going to find this. Linen is very expensive, and it's hard to find enough. The odds of you finding linen and wool together is rare. I'm not saying you can't. You're just not going to find it very much. So all you need to do is read the label on the clothing. All right? But you're not going to often find it. Okay? This is vitally important to the priest who needed to be in the linen, to be in a particular vibration when going into the temple. I'll give you some more examples of that. You ever wonder about fasting? Why is it so important to fast, and why does that affect anything vertically? Because all it does is make you hungry. And maybe, just maybe, as you're whining about it, you can focus on Yahweh a little bit, but you know what? It's hard to focus when you're hungry and distracted. So what's the importance of fasting? Well, if you are a vibrational creature, and I'm going to do this one day when I do the fasting teaching. Let me add it to my list. Do fasting teaching. Of course, the other problem is I'm going to lose this piece of paper and never look at it again. Okay. So it's up to you to remind me to do the fasting teaching. So when we do the fasting teaching, if you're vibrational and what you eat has a vibration, so what you eat, will it affect your vibration? Okay, so when you're eating dead, lifeless things, what do you think it does to your vibration? It brings it down. Okay? So when you're eating processed, non-vibrational, non-energetic food, which maybe shouldn't be the word for it, it brings your vibration down. So when you eat raw food, vegetables, fruits, things that are raw, have not been processed, they still maintain their energy, their vibration. When you cook things, you kill the vibration. That includes the vegetables and the fruits. So it's not just about meat. I'm saying even your vegans and your vegetarians are eating dead stuff and without energy if you're cooking it. Okay, so if vibrational food goes in your body, changes your frequency, and this is going to be tough for some of you younger people. How many of you had a radio that you had to tune with a dial that was looking to match frequencies, not digitally? You still have one. That's cool. Does it work? Oh, the 83 Dodge truck would have that. Okay. And it still works. Okay? And so what you were doing to try to get in a station, now you're used to in a digital world going, I'm looking for the station that's 102.7, and so you just click your little digital thing and it tunes into a frequency that 102.7 represents, and then that frequency is connecting that information that's flowing in that frequency in the air and pulls it in so you can hear it. So there's a vibrational frequency of information. Right now we are surrounded by sound. We just can't hear it because of the frequency it's at. That's why you take a radio or a device that can now take and interpret that energy and vibration and translate it into something you can hear. Okay? Now, that being said, when you fast and you're now purging out and cleansing yourself of the stuff that was lowering your frequency, could it be that now you're like tuning your dial into Yahweh's frequency? Think about it. Fasting, how much more would you think when they fasted like Moses did for 40 days? That's cleaned out the whole system. There's nothing in there to bring down his vibrational frequency. So how much more? That's why people say that when they fast, they start to get insight. They feel some sort of more vertical connection, especially when it's longer fasting, because it's now altering the frequency you have to help bring it in line with the frequency of the one who made you. Isn't that interesting? Okay? And so that all ties together as we're looking at these things to understand. So when you're talking about things like wool and linen, and how those frequencies cancel each other out. Well, the frequency you need to be in so that you communicate in the highest level with your Heavenly Father is when you're on this. You ever notice that when you talk to somebody, you struggle to talk to them when you feel like, I'm sorry, we're just on the wrong, different pages? You ever feel like you're just on a different page from somebody where you're like, whatever you say, they hear it different? You're not on the same energy level. You're not on the something, your frequencies are not tuned in. But there's other people, boy, when you sit with them, you click and you even don't even have to use words. Just a look. A lot of husbands and wives can do this without a problem. Okay? Why? Because they have learned to tune their frequencies into each other. And when they're in tune, it all clicks. And when it all clicks, communication's enhanced. So fasting will do that. Because fasting is going to allow your vibration to reset back to source because it's not taking the other stuff in that alters your frequency. Interesting. Hopefully that was useful to somebody. All right. Okay, whoops. Okay, Jeff's going to go ahead and ask a question or make a comment.
Okay. Going back to Deuteronomy 22:13 through 29, concerning the marriage and adultery thing. So when Yeshua met with the Israelites, going to Exodus 19 and 20, at Mount Sinai, he, in a very real sense, he actually married the Israelites at that point.
Correct.
So based on this understanding, whenever they engaged in the idolatry thing, is it possible that Yeshua saw it as adultery?
When they did idolatry. Oh, absolutely. Look, and by the way, when you see Yahweh, he puts Israel away. They commit idolatry. They commit spiritual adultery all over the place. He publicly marks them, and he sends them away. Okay? So you see some of these things happening. All right? So, look, it's 12:37. We're supposed to end at 1. I got a bunch of things I want to shotgun here. Is there anybody that needs to say something real critical before we go to do that? Go ahead.
I had a question on 23:18 when it talks about the pay of a dog. Just wondered what that was.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There it is. 23:18. Thank you. All right, the thing about the dog. Yahweh just doesn't like dogs. He likes cats. I'm kidding. Relax. Thou shalt not lie. By the way, for all of you that had fun with us, what color are dogs usually? Come on, yellow. Tail wagging and just, right? What color are cats? They are so white. They are not going to give you a second of attention unless they want to, and they'll ignore you, and they'll just leave me alone. I do what I do when I want to do it, and blah, 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 right? They are so white. But those dogs are all yellow. They think, every time you walk in, they're like, it's a brand new gift. He's back. I can't believe it. Cat doesn't even notice you. All right. Although if you ever come by my house, I will show you that I have weird cats. I have outdoor cats. I've got 2 cats. They're not mine. Actually, we're their humans. People often say, are those your cats? I say, no, we're their humans. Because they adopted us. They found us. They're outdoor cats. And they sit on my porch. They're like guard cats. They're useless if anybody comes by, but they sit on my porch. But they come when I whistle. They won't even acknowledge me if I call their names. But if I whistle, wherever they are, and we're on 2 acres, and they could be on another property, and I do the loud, the loud whistle, they'll come, and that's a really fun. They're strange. They will come when I whistle. It's a frequency. Whatever, they'll come when I whistle, but that's about it. Okay, so 23:18. 23:18 says, do not bring the gift of a whore or the pay of a dog to the house of Yahweh your Elohim for any vowed offering, for both of these are an abomination to Yahweh your Elohim. So what in the world is the pay of a dog? Now, we could try to get the Peshat, but I think that would be tough. I don't think literally a dog is going to give you anything to pay or something to put as a gift or an offering in the house of Yahweh. So Peshat is out on this one. So what does this mean? What's it hinting at? What is it trying to tell us, this pay of a dog? Dawid?
The understanding I've been given is that in that culture, they had a process that was known as a homosexual temple prostitute. So in essence, it would have been a man doing the same deeds as a female temple prostitute. That's what I was given to understand from my studies.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, Nate.
Could it be that usually when you're sitting at the table, you have leftovers and you just take whatever's left over? That's pretty much what you're not going to eat. That's what you pay your dog with.
Okay, so in other words, you're not bringing your leftovers and your scraps to the house of Yahweh. That's a good one. I like that. And again, what we're doing here is called educated guessing. We have no verse, by the way, anywhere in Scripture that tells us what in the world this is. We just don't. So we're going to look at it and make an educated guess. And so we also have to be careful always, if we're doing an educated guess, that we never present it as fact. Okay? Now, there is a reference in the New Testament to even the dogs can do this, or something about, and the dogs were not allowed. It said no dogs were allowed in the temple. What's this thing with the dogs? Dogs was also used later, and maybe also earlier here, as a idiomatic understanding of those that were of covenant that left. Because this is the way that the Israelites would look at the Samaritans and others that were Israel but had left. They looked at them as dogs. So it was a derogatory understanding. So could it be about the scraps? I like that one. I think that's a good answer. Could it be this other one? That's good too. There's lots of different levels that we can have. Could it be the temple prostitute? Because after all, I talked about the whore. And so certainly the continue. So it's all three of these things are possibly right, and they all could be right. Okay? And we could have all three of them completely wrong, although they would apply. In other words, that may not be exactly what he's saying here, but certainly they could apply. In other words, they would work in the scenario. So hopefully so for you, hopefully that answers your question to some degree. Okay, Kurt.
All right. Question here is, what does it mean when it says that in Deuteronomy 23:1, if the testicle is crushed or the penis is cut off, they shall be cut off from your people? I ask this because I had an incident which involved the twisting of one of the testicles and eventual loss of it in a surgery.
Okay. Now, when it comes to these kinds of things, these are the things that they would have had more detail on, and they would have known how to apply them. And so since we are not in assembly at the moment, thankfully we don't need to figure this out at the moment. And again, we're looking at the wounding and crushing, etc., but we have another verse that talks about the person who reaches out to do that on purpose and the trouble she would get into. All of this goes back to some degree, now this isn't really going to answer the question, but it kind of brings some more pieces in. What was the very first commandment? I'm not saying don't eat the tree, don't eat the fruit, but what was the very first thing that they were told to do? Be fruitful and multiply. So if you have a crushed member, are you going to be able to be fruitful and multiply? No. So this was a problem in that scenario in the assembly together when the nation, because look, I don't know if you've ever seen the videos out there, and there's a ton of them out on YouTube, but we are going to have, if Yeshua doesn't show up anytime soon, and we don't make any changes, a Muslim world, even if they don't even blow up anything. Because they're giving birth to 6 point whatever children, and the rest of us are doing 1.2 whatever children. And so just by birth, they will take over. Okay? And this is a problem. Israel was told to multiply, and by the way, you saw how that affected Pharaoh. Pharaoh started getting nervous because they were multiplying. But that made him a huge nation that could come out and protect itself because there was about 3 million of them. So that doesn't answer the question as to then what do you do today? How does that affect you? I believe that all of you, especially if it's something that you did not do purposely to yourself, okay, are going to be okay. That's not going to be a problem. This was specific to the assembly. The assembly that was being put together then for those purposes, and we don't know how it was applied to those that were born with a birth defect
or those that had some sort of an accident or whatever else, because Yahweh is not a respecter of persons. His mercies are above and abounding beyond any other types of levels we can think of in terms of mercy and compassion and love. So no, I can't believe that he would punish and isolate and ostracize those that had a deformity and say, I'm sorry, you're deformed, you can't get in. When all the verses I read talk about those who are lame and injured and poor and in need being held to the highest regard. Okay? And so I have to find a way to balance those things. All the pieces of the puzzle have to be used. So thankfully, that will be settled when Yeshua reestablishes the assembly. And then we won't have to worry about that answer because he'll know and he'll tell us all what we're doing. Okay, but until then, I would have total confidence that my Father loves me and understood exactly that this is who I am and how I would be, and that I would end up in this condition, and that there is a path to the kingdom for you. Okay? Another question or comment back there? Okay, on this side. Okay. Tamara?
Okay, thank you, Rabbi. So I have a question. My family, my sister is a non-believer, in a sense, Torah. But her son, when he was about 2, had to go back and have his circumcision fixed because it was not done correctly. So if the scenario were that she were Torah, she were trying to be obedient to the Torah, would she be wrong not to fix that? I guess I'm kind of stemming it off the whole.
I mean, I don't know why, if something was done wrong, you wouldn't fix it.
True.
I don't know where the Torah would come into it in terms of that she didn't do it as a part of Torah, and although the circumcision is something that, hospitals used to do automatically when a baby was born in a lot of places. I mean, if you have some sort of a surgery and it's not done well and it can be fixed, you probably should fix it. Okay, I don't know how else to address that. I mean, if there are reasons why she wouldn't, I would like to know them, and if maybe there's a reason that makes sense. I don't know.
Sympathy. Sympathy. She felt sorry for her son.
And because she felt sorry, she wouldn't fix it?
I know. I don't have boys, so I don't know the logic, but she felt bad that he would have to undergo a
Another
procedure
surgery.
like that. And
So I think it would have to do with what went badly, how bad it was, how much did it affect the functionality and everything else. In other words, there's a lot of things. Do you remember in school where they had A, B, C, D, and E a lot of time was not enough information? Be ready to use that a lot when people ask you stuff and ask yourself, do I actually have enough information? Because a lot of you, and shame on you, a lot of you start to answer people's questions and give counsel when you really don't have enough information. And the other thing that you do, so I'm kind of glad that you mentioned this, the other thing that you do, you believe the person talking to you. That you laugh. But you assume they're telling you the truth. And they're not always doing that. And by the way, they're not lying necessarily either. They, from their position and their filters and their emotions and everything else, that really may be the way they remember it or saw it or experienced it to them. That doesn't mean it's actually what happened. Anybody ever experienced that, where somebody was telling you something and you came to find out that's not really what happened, but yet they really believed it? So stop believing everything everybody tells you without verification. Because I've had somebody come up and say, well, so-and-so told me that this person did blah, 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 blah. I said, how do you know they really did that? Well, because they told me. Don't believe all that. If you've ever counseled with me, I will have told you at some point, especially husbands and wives, I will have told you that if I heard one side of it, I absolutely have no idea what really happened. If I've heard both sides, I only know that what happened is the stuff you both agreed upon. Otherwise, I still don't know what happened. I'm not here to take sides when I'm talking to them. But if you've counseled with me, you know I've told you that.
Okay, so we've had that conversation, right? So if I only have one of them comes to me, well, blah, 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 my husband, blah, 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 my wife. I said, okay, I will validate that absolutely is how you feel, and that's what you believe is what you experienced. Because you have to validate that. That's real to them. I said, but just so you know, I don't know what happened. But I just told you. No, you told me what you think happened. And I'm validating that. But still doesn't mean that's what happened. And then I might speak to the other one, the spouse that I didn't talk to, and get a story that has certain pieces in common. That probably happened. The stuff that they didn't agree with, I still don't know. Okay? And quite frankly, it doesn't really matter. It's getting them to resolve their different ways of perceiving it that's important. It's not important necessarily that we actually figure out who was right and what really happened. I need to get them first to acknowledge that the other person legitimately felt that's what happened and saw it that way. And that experience was real to them. And that's the beginning of the healing. Okay? So let's remember that as we're dealing with these things. And so when you're telling me something like, well, she made a decision, well, unless she explains to me herself what was going on and why she made the decision, you know, because she could tell you she did it because she felt bad for her son. She may have had totally different motives about her own fears and concerns about it, but wanted to give him, because it's such a great excuse, to use him as the excuse. And to her, she may think she really is doing it for him. Because I've seen parents where I've talked to, well, I'm doing it for my daughter. And I come to realize, no, the more I'm talking about it, you're doing it because it's about you, not about your daughter. You're just using her as the excuse because you had something in your childhood, or you didn't get to do that, or when you did that, you got in trouble. Whatever it was, and you're vicariously applying it here, but your daughter really has no thoughts about this whatsoever, it turns out. So you have to be careful with those things. Amen? All right, I got a long list here. I want to hit quick. Anybody else before I go through it?
Well, I have 7 questions online, but we'll wait. You might cover it in your
right.
through topics.
Let me see what I hit real quickly here. Okay. Very important that you remember chapter 23, verse 3. Okay, an Ammonite or Moabite does not enter the assembly. Remember, we talked about this the other day. We mentioned it. Okay, it says, even a 10th generation of them does not enter the assembly of Yahweh. Okay. So I don't know what we say about the person that asked about him entering the assembly in today's modern context, but certainly in the context of, could we say that King David was in the assembly? He was the king of the assembly at that point, right? All right. So no Moabite or Ammonite up to the 10th generation. Do you know that it is less than 10 generations from that moment that we have somebody named Ruth end up with somebody named Boaz, who through children very quickly ended up with David. Okay, so in the list of Messiah's lineage in Matthew, we have a Moabite. Others will use that in the anti-missionaries to say, well, your Messiah is illegitimate because there's a Moabite in the lineage, throw him out. Okay. So my question to you is there a Moabite in the lineage of Messiah? No. Wait a minute, but Ruth, it says, and I can go to Ruth chapter 2 and read you where it says, Ruth the Moabitess. So Ruth was a Moabite. So why are you telling me no? Because you listened to the teaching I did, and you know that the answer is no. In Ruth chapter 2, in verse 2, it says, and Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, and understanding the identity, discovering your identity is the teaching. What it takes to be an Israelite is choice. So Deuteronomy 23:3 is critical when matching it up with the book of Ruth to understand that. Because if she was a Moabite, we have a problem. But the point is this, and this is something that should be very comforting to all of you, that once you make the choice, this proves that once you make the choice, whatever you were no longer matters. We should clap that. This is huge, okay? So you don't have to worry about your past and where you came from, Because when Ruth said to Naomi, wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Your ways will be my ways. What did she do? She stopped being a Moabite and became an Israelite. So yes, she had been a Moabite. And you had been whatever you were. Certainly, at the very least, you had been a sinner, walking around in some ignorance about what was going on. And then you came to learn a bunch of stuff and then made the choice and said, I want to be a part of what's called the assembly, the Commonwealth of Israel, as Shaul talks about in Romans with the tree, in Romans 11, to be grafted in. But when you're grafted in, you are what you were grafted into. You are not just always like a redheaded stepchild, as they would use the idiomatic phrase. And I feel bad for all the redheaded stepchilds. But it's the idiomatic phrase that people use. Okay, 3 of them in the room go, whoa. I am a redheaded stepchild. Okay, but that phrase is meant to be treated as a second class, not really a part of, always being somewhat shunned and not accepted. Okay? And so you're fully accepted, you're fully Israel, as much as anybody born in it, once you've made the choice and commitment. So Ruth was just as fully Israel as Boaz when she married him. She didn't become Israel because of marriage. She had already become Israel before he married her. Okay? So Deuteronomy 23:3, very important when you talk to people about these things. You know, that connects the book of Ruth to the conversation. By the way, we have another thing to connect with Ruth in chapter 25. The whole thing with the sandal. Do you remember that at the end of the book of Ruth? Okay? Where the Redeemer, okay, did not choose to take her. Okay? And so they did the ceremony with the sandal. So you see that at the end of the book of Ruth. You also see that in chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. Okay? Not going to go through them. Just connect those dots yourself. The whole thing about the family member not taking the relative, the wife, who is no longer because the husband had died. And then, so there's now the kinsman redeemer didn't do that. And so now there's an opportunity for someone else to do that. But the sandal ceremony is mentioned. So if you're reading the book of Ruth, you're like, what in the world is that all about? Well, if you don't know Deuteronomy, you don't know. But it's in Deuteronomy. Okay, so you have that. So we covered that. I don't want to be vulgar, but when Yahweh tells you to take a sharp instrument and even bury your excrement, he's covering everything. I mean, he wants to make sure you know that everything matters. There's a way to do everything that's right, and he's going to show you that details matter, because he's even going to tell you, and by the way, think about the safety of it. You're going to keep disease. You're going to keep the smell. You're going to keep the flies. You're going to keep all the stuff out of the camp. You're going to go and bury these things. This is a health issue. This is wisdom. But he's showing you that he's even concerned about that, about the sanitary issues. Really interesting to me that, you know, that he would even make that an issue to put in your scriptures. Okay, let's see real quick here. In 24, verse 8. Oh, it's almost 1 o'clock. We have to go quickly, or I'll just have to cut some things off here. In 24, verse 8, I just want to throw this in here. I know there's a lot of you that may be truly humble, and some of you may be very false humility, who never like to take any credit or say, you know, like if somebody came up to you and said, hey, that was a really great teaching. If I just say thank you and don't try to redirect that to Yahweh, they get all mad. Oh, you're taking credit. Listen to Moses here in verse 8. He says, take heed in an outbreak of leprosy to diligently guard and do according to all that the priests, the Levites, teach you, as I commanded them. Now, was it Moses that came up with all of that stuff? No. But did he have any problem saying, I had the authority, it was my job, and I commanded them? He had no problem with that either. So let's kind of work that through, that if a teacher is instructing, and even if you thank that teacher for the instruction, the teacher is simply representing his teacher, and it's okay for him to simply say thank you and not have to constantly go and redirect everything, because that becomes just I still did part of the work. I should be appreciative of that and say thank you. And part of what you're appreciating is me being that instrument. But I know there's a lot of people that have actually made comments to me over the years, and I've seen them do it in front of other people to do the same thing, saying, oh, you're taking credit for something you shouldn't. Oh, that's of Yahweh. You should always just be deflecting. There are people I cannot give credit to anything. If I go to praise them, oh, no, I didn't do anything. It's all Yahweh. Yeah, but you allowed him to do it. You did what he asked you to do. You responded to his urging. And so there are people that I have a hard time thanking them or giving them any kind of praise or appreciation because they won't take it. Stop that. Take it. Take it knowing that I'm appreciating what he's doing and inspiring you to do whatever it was that benefited me. Okay? So here you see Moses. And see, this is again one of those simple hinted things that you could easily miss. But he says, as I commanded them. Now, either Moses overstepped his bounds and usurped authority, and he did the commanding, or he was totally in his role, and it was appropriate for him to say that he commanded that they should know that that was coming from Yahweh. How many times do you hear Moses say, doing the things that I've commanded you to do today? That's Moses speaking in a lot of those places. But he's doing it in a role. When he's standing doing those things, you're supposed to be seeing him as the representative of the Most High. Okay? If that's my role at the moment, that's what you should be seeing, and I should be clear that it should not be about me. I don't think for a second Moses thought it was about him. How do I know that? Moses is referred to as what? The most humble of all men. I can promise you I am not. I am struggling and working on that just like the rest of you do. But he was called the most humble of men. So I can feel really confident he never thought it was about him. Okay? All right. So I just thought that was an interesting one. In 24:16, this also goes to Ezekiel 18, I believe, the idea that you are responsible for you. Fathers are not to be put to death for their children, children not put to death for their fathers. Each is to die for his own sin. Okay? This is for you to understand personal responsibility versus generational responsibility. Stop using the excuses. Well, but my mother and my father and the way I was raised, you know what? All of that is true, I'm sure. I'll give you that. It may not be, but I'll say it's true. Everything you say, let's assume for a second it was true. I feel horrible for you that you had to deal with that. I do. I mean, I hear real stories all the time of some of the terrible things people experience growing up. But at some point, it's irrelevant. You're supposed to have figured it out, counseled it through, and taken responsibility for yourself. That's what the scripture's talking about. Saying you are responsible for you. Go read Ezekiel 18. It says if your father does good, that's not going to do anything for you unless you do good. If your father does bad and you do good, you're fine. If your father does good and you do bad, you're not good. The generation before you does not credit you anything, good or bad. You're responsible for you. Okay? So let there be an encouragement that you should be making the strives and be striding and making the effort to get to the place where you can take whatever it was that was real and happened, compartmentalize that with counsel so it no longer causes you damage so that you actually can be you instead of being the you that was kind of imposed on you by others. A lot of you aren't even you. I have to work with people on a regular basis saying part of your problem is that you don't know who you are. You only know you in the context of your husband or your wife or your parent or whoever it was that kind of told you who you were. That's a lot of counseling that we do to try to clean that mess up. Okay, I've seen some people that were married since they were very, very young, and then they would have a bad relationship because they made a bad choice or somebody put them in a marriage they shouldn't have been in. Then they get out of that and they want to rush into another one. 5 minutes later, I'm saying, look, you need to figure out who you are in your own skin before you go and attach yourself to somebody else. Take a break for 5 minutes and figure out who you are away from everybody else. Because I've met some people that have been in 3 or 4 marriages, and that's because they were running away from their identity because they needed to be having their identity in the other person. And then when I talk to them about things and say, well, what do you want? They think, that's a weird question. What do you mean, what do I want? Because they're always in the context of whatever the other person wants. And they look at me like, I don't know how to answer that question. What do you mean, what do I want? Do you actually care what I want? I said, do you know what you want? That's a weird question for me. I don't know what I want. I said, well, let's not go and join yourself to anybody else until you figure that out. Does it make sense? Okay? Personal responsibility versus generational stuff. Okay, so it's not generational blame. We got to stop the generational blame. Well, I use an excuse because I was raised that way, and by the way, I don't like to hear from anybody, well, that's just the way I am. Fine, but you're not supposed to stay that way. So knock it off. You're not going to get away with that with me. I'm sorry, well, that's just the way you just got to accept me as I am. I do accept you as you are. I also am expecting you to keep growing into the image of Yeshua. I accept you absolutely as you are right now, but if you're that same exact way, 100% without change next year, we may have a problem to talk about. Why is it you're not growing? Well, because you just need to accept me. It's just the way I am. No, I want you to be telling me that's just the way you were. Can we get to that point where you say, well, no, that's the way I was before. I'm going that way, becoming like Yeshua. I'm not going backwards. And I'm not getting stuck right here. I don't remember which denomination refers to themselves or others refer to as the frozen chosen. Is it the Baptist? Or who is it telling me to? But the frozen chosen, don't be frozen in that position. You were chosen to grow and change, to grow in knowledge and in grace and in understanding of our Messiah and become like him. We're supposed to be growing, heading in a direction, constantly moving in the direction. Now, of course, in chapter 24, verse 22, and in many, many places it says, and do not forget that you were a slave in Egypt. So you are to remember where you came from, to not desire to go back, but also not to be all prideful and ego and everything, because now that things are good, to think that, oh, I've arrived. And I'll look down on the people that are still back where I was. So remember where you came from, but don't wish you were back there and don't act like you're still there. Okay? Let's see. We covered the book of Ruth thing here. All right, so real quickly, I got just a couple of more things. In chapter 26 and verse 17, and we are late, but that's okay. That's sort of par for the course. All right. 17, okay? And 17 says, you have today caused Yahweh to proclaim to be your Elohim, and to walk in his ways and guard his laws, his commands and his right rulings, and to obey his voice. And Yahweh has caused you to proclaim today to be his people, a treasured possession as he has spoken to you, and to guard all his commands. This is a fulfillment of Exodus 19, the covenant, in verse 5 through 8. So look at what it says in Exodus 19. It says, and now, if you diligently obey my voice, at the bottom of verse 17 in chapter 26 in Deuteronomy, it said that you have obeyed, it says here, it says, you cause you to walk in his ways, guard his laws, and to obey his voice, right? Obeying his voice, there it is. They're doing it in chapter 26 of Deuteronomy, but in Exodus 19 it says, if you diligently obey my voice and guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples, for all the earth is mine. You shall be to me a reign of priests and a set-apart nation. And then we see in verse 8, the people say, and all that Yahweh has spoken we shall do. All that Yahweh has spoken we shall do. So now we see that promise, that covenant made at Sinai, actually being put into activation here as they're crossing as a nation over the Jordan. He's saying, we're now in activation mode. This is the covenant. You're going forth into the land. You are the people that I chose. I've separated you. Don't forget, your part in this is to proclaim that Yahweh is your Elohim and to walk in his ways, guard his laws and his commands, his right rulings, and to obey his voice. And you are going to be, when you go into that land, a treasured possession, as he spoke to you. So connect those dots. Exodus 19 to Deuteronomy 26. All right? chapter 27 and verse 20. Just an interesting side point here. It says, "Cursed is he who lies with his father's wife, because he has uncovered his father's bed." There's other places in Leviticus where it talks about the nakedness of the this and the nakedness of the that. I want you just to consider, when you look at the Peshat in Genesis, when Noah, it says that Noah was their father's nakedness. Could it be that Noah was not naked, but that the sons were inappropriate with the wife of Noah, which, by the way it's worded and follows through, was probably not their mother, but it's referred to as Noah's wife. And so here we see that cursed is he who lies with his father's wife, because this is uncovering the father. So when it says that Noah was uncovered, or they saw their father's nakedness, or that he was uncovered, we see in Leviticus, and here, take all the pieces of the puzzle, because lots of people have tried to use this for saying they did some homosexual things. It's possible. I don't think so. Because I think in the verses that talk about that when you do this, this is your father's nakedness, or this is your brother's nakedness, or this is your whatever's nakedness, that it's likely that when they walked in and they was drunk, that she was available and drunk. They took advantage of her, but she was the problem. Men have always had, for whatever reason, not a big deal problem being in places where they are naked and other men are around. That was in the gymnasiums, even of the Greek. Men go into restrooms and they don't have to all have private little stalls. You go into other places where there are showers, where there are lots of heads and the men are in there. I mean, men don't seem to have that problem, so that it's a big deal that a man accidentally saw a man naked. So it's probably something more than that. Okay? They would have bathed in the rivers, and the men would have probably been okay being together in the same river, okay? The point is, it was probably the woman. And this verse kind of connects that as another piece of that puzzle. Add Deuteronomy 27 to what was going on in Leviticus, where those verses are that talk about the nakedness of and the nakedness of, okay? Or is it in Leviticus or Numbers, wherever it is? I forget where it is, but I can find it. Actually, I'm not going to find it that quick, so never mind. Okay, but you know the verses we're talking about, okay? Just something interesting that I saw there in the curses. Okay, we covered that. All right, last thing is the blessings and cursings, chapter 28. I want to make sure we just cover this. I'm going to read 2 verses at the beginning and then 2 here in the middle with the blessing and cursings. You need to embrace, this is what you do to get blessing, and this is what you do for cursing. It shall be, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahweh. Diligently. Okay, we have a teaching that has to do with diligently. Okay? And so you must diligently obey. If you diligently obey the voice of Yahweh, your Elohim, to guard to do all his commands, which I command you today, that Yahweh your Elohim will set you high above all the nations, and all these blessings shall come. If, then all these things shall come. If you do the part that it says, if you do, obey the voice and guard the commands that I'm giving you to do. That brings the blessing. Then we get to verse 15, and it shall be if you do not obey the voice of Yahweh to guard to do all his commands, then all the cursing will overtake you. This is not complicated. If you do, then the good stuff happens. If you don't, then it doesn't. It's not rocket science. Even a kid can understand this. You know how I know? Because all of you with children speak the exact same way to them. I have told my children, if you obey my voice, I will shower you with blessings. Good things will be given unto you. If you disobey my voice, you are going to feel some cursings. Things will be taken away. Things you want will not be given to you. We talk to our children that way. Are we not the children of Israel? Is he not our heavenly Father? He's talking to us just like he would talk to any other children. Okay? Last one. In verse 28 of the same chapter, And Yahweh shall smite you with madness and blindness and bewilderment of heart. And you shall be groping at noon as a blind man gropes in darkness, and not prosper in your ways. Anybody know another verse that says that you'll be looking through the glass darkly? That's all part of the cursing. When you struggle, okay, and you do, everybody can admit it. How many of you struggle to really do all of this stuff? Okay? To really grasp what Yahweh's trying to get you to do and stop doing that stuff. You're in the cursing. We're all still in the dispersion. We're still suffering the punishment. So in the cursing, he says you will be groping around like a blind man. Okay, you're going to be groping around. Just like the other verse says, and you're going to be like looking through that glass darkly. You can't really see everything clearly. So even though your Gnostic side of you wants to understand everything perfectly, realize, I'm sorry, but we're in the cursing. That's just not going to happen completely until we get through the cursing. Now, he's chosen because of the process of bringing us back into the blessing to reveal an amount of his stuff to us. And we are to focus on what he's revealed. We've read verses where it says, that which is revealed is for you, that which is not is for him. Now, he may choose to reveal more and more to you, but you're responsible for what he's revealed. You're not responsible for what he has not yet revealed. So I know you struggle. That's okay. Keep struggling, but don't spend most of your time focused on trying to figure out what you don't know at the cost and the neglect of that which you know that you should be doing. Let's work that out. Let's get that done. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, that's going to complete my quick points here. Where's the mic? Okay, Dale, you want to close us in prayer? See, I know Kurt wasn't going to raise his hand. I got him 3 times last week.
Father, we thank you for this rich opportunity to come and to learn and to sit before you. And we pray that the words that have been spoken would be blessing and that they would be life. And that you would also bless our meal that we're about to have. And we give you glory and praise. In Yeshua's name, amen.
Amen. Okay, thank you, Dale. By the way, men, let me put you on notice. Every one of you, because of who you are and your role, should be able to do that. Without practice and rehearsal and preparation, you should be able to take an opportunity to give the prayer on behalf of a group, be it your family or an assembly. That's part of our job. We are responsible to do that. That's not that the women can't, but you guys must be okay and ready and prepared. So if I catch you off guard and give you a mic, I'm sorry, but that's part of what we're responsible to do. Amen? Amen. All right. Have a good day. We'll see you mañana. We'll see you tomorrow. Oh, it was quick? When he says it, he means it, and you don't get to bend it and twist it to what you want. That's the whole point of Deuteronomy 8:2. He's allowing you to walk through this wilderness walk so that you can prove whether or not it's in your heart to do what he says. I focus a lot on the commandments, but ultimately it's about people. It's about living together forever with people.